Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the December 5th, 2017 Lake Forest City Council meeting. To order. Convene. We're going to take intermission for convening the Housing Authority. We're going to convene and concur with the City Council meeting at this time. And invocation, we had a pastor set up to come. He unfortunately called us this evening and said he wasn't able to make it. So if you would bow your heads and I'll lead us in prayer tonight. Father, we just thank you and praise you for this opportunity to come together here to make decisions for the city of Lake Forest. We ask that you would guide us with your wisdom, Father God. Surround us with your favor, Father God. Watch over and protect those that live within the city of Lake Forest. Bless those that serve and protect our city in Orange County Fire, Orange County Sheriff Department, Father God. Protect those that are out there at night, Father God, serving us and protecting us, Father God. We thank you and praise you for the businesses of Lake Forest. We ask that you would prosper them, Father God, so that it would prosper our community. We ask, Father God, that those that are in attendance here tonight, Father God, would be blessed. Father God, give us unity, Father God, for a common cause, for the good of Lake Forest, Father God, and the people here. I ask you a special blessing on the Boy Scouts who are here tonight that will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, Father God. Bless this holiday season, Father God, whether they are celebrating Hanukkah or Christmas, Father. We celebrate, Father God, this different atmosphere that comes across this nation and this world at this time, Father. I believe that a Savior was born, and we celebrate that Savior this month, Father God. And we just thank you and praise you, God, for that Savior, and we just give you all the praise, glory, and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And with that, I think we have a special guest here, Boy Scout Troop 604, that would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, guys. Would you guys be willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Come on, guys. It's an honor to do this.
Like we talked about. We rehearsed this.
Come up to the mic. Right there. You guys are Lake Forest Troop 604?
Yes.
Alrighty. Line up all behind them, guys. Line up all the way. Stay, one guy stay at the mic. Okay.
May the audience please stand. Troop salute. If you're not in uniform, put your right hand over your heart. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two. You may be seated.
Thank you, Troop 604. City Clerk, or City Attorney, do we have anything to report from closed session?
There is no reportable action tonight, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Do Sarah from El Toro High School, School Liaison for us. We always like to hear a report from our favorite high school, El Toro Chargers.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Sarah Dahlstrom here, reporting to you on the past and upcoming events at El Toro High School. Before Thanksgiving break, our annual camp food drive came to a close on Friday, November 17th, as we anticipated. Our entire ASB class was in complete organized chaos the entire morning, as our entire Charger family counted all the cans that we've collected over these past few weeks before. We exceeded our goal of 115,000 cans and successfully raised 116,675 cans.
Woo!
We are so happy to give all of our donations to both South County Outreach and Adopt a Neighbor in their efforts to feed families in time for the holidays. Zachary Waterman and I, as well as our ASB family, couldn't have done it without our support of our fellow elementary and middle schools in our SVUSD district, as well as our Lake Forest community. In other sports news, on Friday, November 23rd, our boys' varsity football season came to a close when they headed up to St. Francis to play the semifinals in CIF. Our boys put up a good fight, but were defeated by St. Francis. Good job and excellent season to our boys' varsity football team. Basketball season is now in full swing. Our varsity basketball boys' first home game is this Friday night at 7 p.m. against Esperanza High School. Good luck, boys basketball. Later this month, we will be holding our annual Winter Pep Rally on December 15th. Currently, our ASB is in the works of creating one memorable holiday pep rally that will include many dances performed by both our ASB and plenty of other winter sports, as well as highly anticipated class competitions. That's all I have for tonight. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great evening, and as always, go Chargers.
Thank you, guys. You guys always make us proud, and so we're so extremely proud of you guys as you're academic. You guys are overachievers, whether it be athletic or academic or food can drives. You guys go over the top, and so thank you guys so much. Happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, guys.
I take presentations are before us now. I'll take a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Cast your votes, please.
That motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 2, Employee Service Awards, submitted by Director of Management Services.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Back in 2002, the City Council established an Employee Service Award program, which recognizes employees who have a milestone year of service with the City of Lake Forest. A milestone year of service includes all those and multiples of 5. In 2017, the City had 13 employees who hit a milestone anniversary, and some of them are here tonight to be recognized. So I'd like to ask all of you come down to the front and join me as we recognize each of those employees so you can personally congratulate them. Yeah, I think have it come back here. And after I've called everyone's name, please stay standing up here up front so we can get a picture afterwards. So we're going to start off with the 5-year service award recognized employees. The first person is Stephen in Tisdale. Next, we have John Chavez, also 5 years. Next, we have Juan Esquivel, also 5 years.
You know, Juan is the guy you see when you first come to the city of Lake Forest, so we especially like his smiley face.
Next, 5 years, Tom Wheeler.
Now we really show a lot of appreciation because he's the one that's in charge of our parks and our drives in and out of the city, so the roads are his.
And last but not least, for the 5-year, Amanda Wicker.
because our economic development team, and Amanda is it, so thank you, Amanda.
All right, now we have entering our 10-year anniversary winners, or not winners, but employees. They're all winners. Susan Etner.
Okay, answering the phone, the front desk again.
Also for 10 years, Carol Ortiz. Stay up here. And for our sole 15-year anniversary, Vicki Blethyn.
Guys, she is very appreciative this time of year. The holiday lighting along Altora Road was Vicki actually organizing that. One, two, three. All right, then one group shot.
All right, group shot.
All against the back.
Hey, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Do one more. 1, 2, 3. I know, especially
Yes.
Everybody. They win a chicken dinner.
Oh, really?
It's like the dog years. It feels like 15. It's like 15.
I've never seen that. No, I really haven't.
Agenda item number 3, recognition of City Clerk Stephanie Smith for her 8 years of service, submitted by City Manager.
Mayor and members of the City Council, it's with a heavy heart that we have this presentation tonight. Stephanie Smith, our well-loved city clerk, is leaving us. She's breaking up with us to go with the city of Marietta. So Stephanie joined us in 2009. She was very shy back then, and we always had to say, you know, Stephanie, you need to share your ideas. She was just a shy flower, but she really bloomed with us over the years. And so she has initiated some great projects for us, including our agenda management system. She brought passport acceptance services here to Lake Forest, and so we're able to offer that to the community. And I think for those who know Stephanie, you really realize what a passion she has for the city clerk profession and what a dedicated public servant she is. And so I always say if there's ever a parade float dedicated to public servants, I think our Stephanie, well, Marietta's Stephanie, as of December 15th, would be on the front of that float. So with that, I'd like to invite the mayor to come down to the podium and present a couple of things to Stephanie.
And don't forget the little library, too, right?
2 of them.
You know, Stephanie's been such an asset to the city of Lake Forest. I can't really say goodbye to her or wish her farewell without the rest of the council being here. So, council, if you guys want to come forward, please, with us. And so, I think it's she's been a service not only to the community of all you, but she's the one that's kept things going through all the turmoil that we've had in the Sea Lake Forest and all the things that have gone on. Stephanie's been Switzerland. So, you know, I think that we owe her a debt of gratitude. In the clerk's department is probably as efficient as it would be anywhere in the nation because of her fine organizational skills and mentoring of everybody in that department. So on behalf of a city council that's so grateful to you, but a community, if they knew all that you've done, you'd be the most loved person in Lake Forest. And so we're going to miss you so much. And so we wish you Godspeed. You know, it wasn't Marietta that got her. It was an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from Temecula to come here. The Marietta is 15 minutes? 15 minutes. Now she's got 15 minutes. So it wasn't Lake Forest that drove her away. It was a car drive across Ortega. And so
I offered to get a helicopter and fly, but it wasn't in the budget.
There you go.
you
That
know,
would have done it. That would have done it.
there's only 3 ways that you can get a plaque from the City of Lake Forest: to earn your Eagle Scout boys, to serve on the city council, or serve so overly well as a city employee. So on behalf of the City of Lake Forest, we sincere appreciation for the 8 years of outstanding service and dedication to the City of Lake Forest. Your contribution and commitment to excellence in public service have made a lasting impact on our organization. The city and its residents will benefit from your exemplary work for years to come. You've set an example for all of us. Thank you. And we all wish her God's best as she moves forward and a shorter drive. Come here, let's get we give him a Jonathan. Maybe you can give a guy. Hey, well, you guys are the ones. I'm sitting here.
Now, before you go, we have more for you.
Oh, my.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. You know, we give a certificate out to those that we love, and boys, you get one too, so get your Eagle Scout. Okay, so for your dedication, sir, we want to give a Lake Forest certification of appreciation. And we have a certificate from the Congress of the United States of America in recognition for your service to the City of Lake Forest, your commitment and years of an example of service for the City of Lake Forest. Congratulations on this honor, and thank you proudly serving your community. Congresswoman Mimi Walters. So let's get a picture. Hey, everybody scoot in here so we can send this to her.
Why don't we each hold
Yeah.
them? You hold them. Okay.
There you go.
Now, it would really be impolite for me to say it's big shoes that we have to fill, but no, but it's a work ethic and standard and knowledge that the institutional knowledge, you know, she not only serves the City of Lake Forest, but she's on many outside clerk associations. One of them being the California Clerk Association, correct?
Correct.
California Clerk Association. That's where the city clerks from the whole state of California come together. And serving as vice president?
Yes, I'm first vice president.
And soon to be one day president of the Clerks Association, I'm sure.
Next September.
So we wish you well, and thank you so much for your years here in Lake Forest.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And from all of the council, we wanted to give you something special from us. Although I think after you open it, you realize maybe we should have been the ones to keep it because we will miss you. You open
Am I
it.
supposed to open
Yes,
it?
open it now, and you will understand.
Oh, boy.
It's a Marietta sweatshirt.
Our 110-degree weather out there.
Well, I mean, you know, all the student liaisons.
Oh. Yes.
Right, so it's
I
want to get you a Marietta sweatshirt.
The box of one.
So now I remembered that you really enjoy wine. So this actually injects into the cork, and it pulls out just the amount of wine you need, so you can drink your wine as, and take your time with a really good bottle of wine instead of it going to waste. But invite us over, because I think I'm going to need some after this.
And because she's going to be spending more time at home, that hour of driving, she can sit and have an hour of wine now.
An hour?
Awesome.
You do drink wine, right?
I do. He says he still has a week to change my mind. I just wanted to say that I am profoundly grateful to the City of Lake Forest for allowing me to be part of the Lake Forest family. And I always say that the city clerk is the bridge between the government and the governed. And I was so excited that I actually got to be that bridge for every one of these council members from the moment that they transitioned from resident to candidate to council member. So all 5 of you started your career in my office, and that was very exciting, and I'm so happy that I got to spend time getting to know each of you and work with you. I will miss everyone here, the council, the staff, the city clerk staff, and the residents who I got to know so many of over the last several years. And just thank you for letting me be part of this family. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
I just wanted to add to the stuff that Scott and Deborah said. We have the most transparent website in the entire county. We put our minutes up faster than anybody else in the county. We have our secondary, I believe we're the only ones in the county that put up that secondary information. If you give us information that you want the county to see, you can see that all online. All of that is due to Stephanie's hard work. She's been a great worker.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item within the City of Lake Forest. No action shall be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person with an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public portion comment of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door and complete it and submit it to Carlo over there. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody from the public?
Yes, Your Honor. David Hertzberg, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Hertzberg. I've been a resident Holy Hills for 27 years. And to my fellow scouts of Troop 604, I am an Eagle Scout. In less than 16 hours, the Thomas Fire has burned 71 square miles of land, destroyed over 150 homes and structures, including some in the heart of the downtown suburbs of Ventura. The fire's ignition point was more than 12 miles to the east in a rural area of the foothills near a private college. The cause is unknown at this time, but one highly possible suspect is to be looked at, and that is the reason I'm here tonight. I want to talk to you about Santa Ana winds, the danger of public power utility lines, especially in our local mountains, foothills, and canyon communities, and a rather delightful, simple solution to make them safer for all of us during high wind events like we have occurring right now. I was enlightened on this subject by an excellent article in the Los Angeles Times that was published on November 24th of this year. In early October, Diablo winds, the Northern California version of Santa Ana's, reached 50 to 70 miles per hour in the Santa Rosa, Sonoma region to create a fierce series of firestorms which incinerated over 8,400 homes, left 44 people dead, and the region saddled with over $1 billion in damages. While the inquiry is still going on, so far there are no firm reports of arson, but there were 10 recorded reports of downed power lines in rural areas during the early hours of the firestorm. More and more evidence is pointing at PG&E's down power lines and the exploding transformers as the true cause of the fire. In the 2007 witch fire in San Diego, 1,200 residential structures, 587 outbuildings were destroyed. Santa Ana winds were clocked at a sustained speed of 90 miles per hour. In some areas, gusts hit 112 miles per hour. The cause of this fire, again, was not arson. The culprit, fire investigators decided, was down power lines owned by San Diego Gas and Electric, who in the end had to pay out massive settlement fees to the public and cities. But SDG&E decided to do something amazing. This is actually kind of cool. They were proactive after the ash and dust settled. The utility spent $1.7 million to install 170 weather observation stations on backcountry power poles to create one of the country's densest weather monitoring networks. I'm now quoting from the LA Times. Every 10 minutes, the stations transmit data to the utility on wind speed, direction, temperature, humidity. When the Santa Anas start blowing, the company's 3 meteorologists...
David, you're going to have to conclude. Your time's up, so conclude your thoughts.
I ask you as the city council, I ask you as city officials, let's get this system here. This is
Thank you. We'll bring, you got a written notice of that? We bring that forth written.
I have both. I have the article.
Thank you. Thank you. Leave that with Carlo if you can leave that. Thank you so much. I love the idea.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention too, thank you for saying this. I think this is important, and I was riveted throughout your whole time. And I'm sorry we've got this 3-minute thing. And when I was mayor, we had the same thing. It was tough.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Next.
Heiko Peschel.
Heiko Peschel for Perel Foothill Ranch. I'm a newcomer. I've only lived in the neighborhood since 1960. Went to school in Huntington, went to college at Orange Coast, been living in this neighborhood since 83, back again since 83. So I'm a newcomer. For the gentleman who just spoke, if he would look on AccuWeather and look at weather stations, he can get that information directly from AccuWeather. Weather stations, 3 of them in Foothill Ranch, and many more in Orange County, will tell you wind speed, wind direction, humidity, barometric pressure. It's all there. It's all available. I check it every day. What else we do is we have a county fire watch, countywide fire watch, that our amateurs support by lending them our repeater on Santiago Peak and our people to go have fun with. Anyway, not the subject. The subject is my thanks to the City Council and especially to the city for all the good things you guys have done this year. Our CP Shannon has done wonders with Facebook to get all that information out. Whoever is doing the same thing for the City of Lake Forest is also doing a great job. For an old person, I actually do look at Facebook because I know there are a lot of young people that's the only way they have left to communicate. They can't talk to each other. But anyway, I wanted to say thank you all very much. Code enforcement on weekends, we need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Heiko.
I had just a quick comment from David Hertzberg. Just so you know, I'm on the board of directors for the OCFA, and the OCFA is actually in the middle of creating a drone system so that every fire station is going to have drone capability, and they'll be able to go out and more easily find fires, which is a great thing. But it's still in the works. They're still developing the program, but it should be coming pretty soon.
I could just say one thing, which I was not allowed. The system powers power lines. I wasn't allowed to get to that point.
All right. You left us written copies too, right? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Well, there's no further requests.
Okay. Thank you for those public comments. At this time, where are we at? This time it brings us to the Warrant Registry. All matters listed under the Warrant Registry are considered routine and will be enacted with one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the Warrant Registry for separate action. Have there been any requests from the public?
No, Your Honor.
Council? To entertain motion. I'll move. Second moved. Please cast your votes for the Warrant Registry. Item number 4.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to consent calendar. All matters listed in the consent calendar are considered routine and will be acted with one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate actions. Has there been a request from the public?
No, sir.
Council?
Number 8.
9, 3, wait, what?
8.
8. 8 and 9. Okay, I'll move the remainder.
Second.
Moved in second. Please, for the remainder of the consent calendar, cast your votes.
That motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 8, approval of exclusive negotiation agreement with National Community Renaissance, submitted by Assistant to the City Manager, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Hamilton.
I guess it's me. So I appreciate staff's work on this. This is another one of these projects that I've taken under my wing, if you will, and I see a lot of problems with the way affordable housing is conducted. And it's not necessarily something our city, it's a city problem, it's a state problem. I can't tell you how many residents have told me, hey, this affordable housing issue is really bothering me. We've had discussions here at the City Council, and I've expressed some of my opinions, and so I think the model that this is using is just, it's not impactful. People get stuck in affordable housing. It's like a rut. It doesn't allow people to increase their income because they've got to meet this narrow band of income. They might have to limit their careers, limit their income, not accept the raise because, you know, the next band that they qualify for goes up. There's a 3-year wait list or a 5-year wait list for that. I know that I think Dr. Gardner and I have had a similar, I think some of your public comments about prevailing wages. You're not a fan of those. I guess the biggest bang for the buck for me is not having someone in affordable housing for 20, 30 years, but to get more impact, help people who need it. And we had talked about veterans and homeless, and so someone going like for a 18 to 24 month kind of rotation, and you get somebody from a low level and get them to a higher functioning level. I think the cost per unit, I've seen somebody, I'll make a motion in a minute. The cost per unit, I think that we saw in some of the quotes in the past were $350,000. I've heard of a nonprofit who could do it for $75,000 with no prevailing wages. So those are my concerns.
Something that I've seen and experienced that when you talk about low-income housing, you have different categories of low-income housing where you can be a resource as in a campus atmosphere where you take people off the street and start getting them ID and moving them to transitional housing, and then semi-permanent housing as they progress, and then to permanent housing, and hopefully one day they'll be out on their own. And I think that's the struggle that we have as council members. We see such a need out there along the riverbeds and the creeks, and the people that are homeless. How do you get them back in society being productive citizens? It's a tricky thing, and I think that what this does is enables it so there are agencies that actually do the whole process of transitional housing from rescue on the street to eventually, hopefully one day, being productive citizens. Is National Corps, is what we're talking about, does National Corps have any programs like that?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Certainly, National Corps is a very well-recognized partner in this area. They have a variety of different types of programs to help different levels of income, one of which is called economic mobility. It provides a type of financial literacy and economic development workforce program to train people, get them in the workforce, and then get them into market rate housing. And then they also have programs that help people who are homeless or are in danger of being homeless. So there's a variety of programs, and we do have representatives from National Corps if you wish to hear from them this evening.
Yeah. Do we have anything from anybody from the public here?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Council, for discussion?
You know, we have that money sitting in the pot, and it's a little under $4 million. I guess eventually it will be $4 million. So the Corps people, the National Corps people, had experience taking that money and between grants and loans and finding, sometimes turning that over into $8 million worth of housing. I think in one case they did $12 million. So at this point, we're not committing to any particular project. We're just committing to asking them to go out and see what they can do for us within the parameters of affordable housing. So I don't, I mean, I'm happy to talk to them, but I don't see us as, you know, we're building an eightplex on near El Toro and Ridge Route, and that's not what we're doing tonight. We're basically saying, okay, we are prepared to very seriously go forward with you. Come back and give us your best estimates that you could do this and that for this kind of population. So if you have some questions of them specifically, I'm happy to hear it. At this point, I don't see us as, and everything you say, I agree with completely. And I don't know, and maybe that's a good question for the National Corps people. I don't know the extent to which we're able to structure affordable housing so it isn't forever housing, you know, so that it's a 3 or a 5 year opportunity to then move on. And I don't know if we have those kinds of abilities or if we're stuck with the affordable housing. So that's at least one question I'd like to ask them. Other than that, you know, I see this as our opportunity to move forward.
As mayor, I call, is National Corps here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we have Mr. Mike Rowan and Alexa Washburn here from National Corps.
Sure, and Madeline, her niece from Families Forward, who's our service partner. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and this is a continuation. I think the questions or the concerns raised are not unique, and they're very valid. And one of the concerns is that it not only, I think it's clear we can build a very high-quality project, but how do you make sure that the goals the council ultimately adopts in the project are achieved? And if the council's goals, the prevailing wage was very clear at the last council meeting, and we agree. If the other goal is you want to see a focus on, we'll call it economic mobility, more of a step up for people that had a bad bounce, something happened, then you probably have the best partnership, because between Families Forward and Mercy House, whatever population the council prioritizes. If it's veterans families, the program would work. And we, you know, and I think in understanding and sharing those concerns, we'd be very willing to live with an agreement that provided penalties or incentives, whichever way you'd want, that would make sure those promises are made. We have great programs, but if, for example, if the council's direction is 20% of the residents are employed and moved out, then you would tie that to the management fee that goes with the property, and you would decrease it based on lack of performance. And I can, you know, and I think the more the financial program is aligned with the council's objectives, then it's really not just promises, it's performance. And what I mean by that is we have very good programs, and depending on the type of program the council ultimately decides, in Marv's Place, which is one of the projects we cited, it's 100% primarily single women who are homeless. And it's a wonderful project, and they've had support, and their goal is to move on. The goal of many of we're very unique, and we shared, many affordable housing developers, I agree with the concern, do not want turnover. Turnover can be costly because they don't have the goal of social, the economic mobility, financial self-sufficiency. A lot of time it's credit that gets in the way of people moving on, the actual not understanding how to build credit. So if the council prioritizes that, and there's metrics we can adhere to, we think that's a very reasonable way to address the concern that's been raised. And it's not a unique concern. That is, how do we make sure we can serve more people? Because the programs in place, and I think between what we do through Hope through Housing, which is our affiliate foundation, Families Forward is excellent. To the extent you're dealing with people that are have dealt with much more serious conditions that led to homeless, if that's a priority, Mercy House, that's what they do. But that may not be what comes out of the process that you're undertaking here. So we welcome that challenge, I guess. We completely agree. We'd rather serve 200 people than 40, if that's the issue. And again, I don't want to negotiate against myself, but I think that you could have an agreement that basically incentivizes or penalizes that move on. We cannot. You can't just throw someone out, based on fair housing, but I think you can certainly motivate us to make sure that they're getting the right tools and moving on.
I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't get your last name.
Sure, Ruane. Sorry.
Sherwin?
Ruane.
Ruane.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Ruane.
Yes.
I don't see Mercy House in the literature that you passed out. Is that something that...
They were in the original proposal, and this Families Forward was actually, they're both a little bit ill. Everyone on the team is ill, so I don't want to bring everyone, but with the hay fever or whatever's going on with the winds. Mercy House is, I can tell you very simply, they're the operator of the family shelter, and the subcontractor is, that's in Orange.
Okay, I think that I probably have consensus by the council, and we see that low-income housing, if you get lucky enough to be drawn to go into low-income housing, you hit the lottery, because many of them get in there, they get comfortable, and they have no intention or any desire to move up because their costs are being covered by their low-income housing. And so we look at it as, I think you have it as economic opportunity or economic progression. We want to see them come in and get a job and then get their credit. And I know it goes on through the process. I know that some of the rescue missions and that, they actually take them off the street, and many of them on the street don't have Social Security cards or driver's license, and so it's a process. And I think that along the process, you get them trained, workforce trained, then you get them a job, they get a line of credit, they move to the next step. And I think that that's kind of like the goal, is because there's such a need out there. If we are not moving people up and moving them through the system, we're never going to be able to help everybody that's out there.
Sure. And that's how we measure success. We don't measure success by housing people.
But some of them, but I got to go back to you. I've seen some of the agencies that we're even talking about. The same people are there 5 years after they've opened up their homes. I mean, it's the same people that aren't moving upwards.
Well, I mean, I can tell you our experience. I know if the program the council desires is a fit of what Families Forward does, that's their goal too. We have the same goal. The service providers, our team, is success to us is that person, whether it's a single parent. The biggest barrier to them succeeding might be childcare, because if to take care of their child, they're giving up some opportunity. So it may be that's why many of our projects have either after school or childcare, or in the case of, so we basically whatever Lake Forest, whatever's the need, which is part of what is in this agreement, we also assess the residents, what they need to be successful. So there probably isn't a program we're not aware of, either from my background, through 211, others, if there's a need here, and there is a wonderful wealth of institutions, banks, nonprofits, and others who want to help people, but having a place where you can get them resources, whether it's a training room, will get there. It may be community college. Saddleback College, if veterans is the priority, has a wonderful cohort of veteran students, and that might be the population that you prioritize, not veteran families. So we do assess the individual needs, and I can share if that's a shared vision and goal, and it's a metric. We're happy, again, not just to have a promise, but it can be a performance-based metric where if that turnover that you're seeing as a goal to move people on could have a financial penalty or incentive, whichever way you want to
So I think that in the request for proposal, in the proposal that we set out, that we wanted to state that we wanted to help veterans.
Yes.
But that's not exclusive to veterans, because sometimes it's not exclusive. Is that correct?
Sure.
So, I mean, you have leadway to not have veterans, too.
Correct.
Okay. So when you have a family or a single mother or a single man or a single, are there time frames that in goals that you try to set a time frame that they're in this project or this housing development for 3 to 5 years or 2 to 3 years?
What you would see in the Family Opportunity Center, which is a model we've used, or whatever the model is here, there's a clear 1-year goal. Then there's long-term goals for that individual. It might be home ownership. The 3 to 5 year goal might be home ownership. The 1-year goal is the skill development and moving on. We aren't, again, the reason we're unique, most people that do this do not want turnover because those turns cost money, painting, carpeting. If it's not part of your mission, then that is why you're encountering, and you've seen what you encounter in some of the examples you've seen. In our case, ACCOC was kind enough to do a bus tour of 40 elected officials to look at our new project in Yorba Linda and tour it for themselves. They had a lot of serious questions about affordable housing. We would welcome any, looking at any of our developments, talking to the residents, and what their goals and aspirations. These are aspirational programs, and again, I think in this case we thought Families Forward would be the best partner, understanding the local community. But if there's a particular need, we will need it.
Okay. Fellow Council Hamilton.
So we did a project with Families Forward, and I don't know. Yes, I've gone and toured your headquarters. Your refrigeration. You had all the food in there. Obviously, was there at the grand opening. I really love what Families Forward does. One of the things that maybe was a challenge was that we did have to pay prevailing wages on that project, and another is that I've heard that the same residents that were in the units are still there.
Sure.
Please.
Hi, good evening. Madeline Hernies with Families Forward. Yes, the Saguaro project was a fourplex that we were gracious enough to receive from the city and do a rehab project in conjunction with Brookfield. So we were able to secure some in-kind donations to help offset that prevailing wage. But just to share with you, so the project has been open since December 2015, so we're at year 2 right now. And so far we have had one family that's been able to graduate. This family over income qualified, so during their annual income recertification, they were making too much money. They had grown their income from about $40,000 to $90,000.
Wow.
The mom was able to secure a job, which is fantastic. So we had 2 dual income earners, and we were able to help them through our housing navigation to get into a Lake Forest market rate apartment. So we're able to keep the family in the school system, in their community, but it's a positive graduation. It's not a punishment to have to leave, but this is a great solution, and then help them with move-in costs to get into that market rate apartment. So in a 2-year time period, 1 out of 4 has moved on successfully, which for us is fantastic because the support that these families need, 3 out of the 4 were homeless, literally homeless families who had entered directly from the streets. One of the mothers was single mother living in her car, had it repossessed, and then was living in the streets. Just in our program, she's been able to get a job as a legal assistant. She finally saved enough money for a new car. She's not taking the bus anymore. So it's going to take a little bit longer for her, but we have really great segmented goals through a critical time intervention, which is a proven case management tool, to make sure that we're with her every step of the way. So it's an intensive process, but the families really do need that support and that time and that affordability to be a safe next step for them so we can get them to that market rate community. That's the ultimate goal.
Question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
The family that moved from the Saguaro project to a market rate apartment, when you transfer them over, do you guys have a allotted time where you actually help them with their rent a little bit at the market rate?
We only had to help this family with the move-in cost because if any of you have looked at an apartment, move-in costs can be quite excessive. So with their rent being about $2,200 and first month's plus security deposit, we did help with the move-in only. We did not have to financially assist the family further because their income was sufficient to take over
Do you guys
that.
have opportunities for that? Like if a family's $500 short or $1,000 short, I mean,
Absolutely.
be that extra crutch while they still progress on?
Absolutely. And so that's going to be a rapid rehousing program where you're providing decreasing financial assistance with case management. For those families who can get into market rate housing, not every family needs affordable housing. Not every family needs a shelter. At some families, they need a hand up to get into market rate housing in maybe 3 to 6 months, while mom goes from unemployment to employment with a great job history. So every family is unique, but we have those flexibilities in our funds.
But you guys both stay there. I think there'll be other council comments.
Yeah, no, I want to say thank you. I mean, that's a great story. I really appreciate it. And again, I love everything that you do. I went on a tour of another provider, and like I said, growing in my education, their turnover is 18 to 24 month. So I'm just giving you the numbers here. It would be about 4 to 6 times. Let me do the lower number first. Faster than 25% in 2 years. Again, no prevailing wages. The cost per unit is $75,000. I think the proposal we saw, this is some of the classes and services they provided on. So they had on-site parenting, on-site childcare, on-site education. We went and toured their education classrooms. They have on-site health care, on-site food service, of which sometimes they were volunteering, on-site case management, on-site counseling, on-site job skills, on-site legal services. And I mean, I haven't seen anything like that.
So, Matt, do you have any kind of thing where you actually go through a staggered thing? Maybe not be on site because the Saguaro project is a 4-unit.
Yes. So with the National Core project, we would be on site and we would bring those services. If we did not have that in-house, we would bring a network provider to come out because we are so well known in the county. We have all of those services at our facility in our program center, and for the Saguaro residents, it's very close. But for some of our other residents, we are mobile and we can connect them to resources that are closer. One of the things I just wanted to add is, Families Forward, when we started in 1984, we were a transitional housing provider. And we were a transitional housing provider until about 3 years ago. In 2009, we decided to operate transitional housing and rapid rehousing, which is where you get a family in an apartment with a lease in their name where they don't have to move, where kids can enroll in school, and then you give them the services they need to stay there versus having them go into a place that has a deadline attached to it. And we operated those programs simultaneously, and we did a study with Cal State Fullerton, and we found that our success rate was as equally successful, if not more, in rapid rehousing, and the cost per family was half the cost per family. So our board of directors did make a strategic decision to stay away from transitional housing and focus more on permanent housing solutions as the real solution to ending family homelessness.
So I guess one of my last questions is, why, maybe this is a question for staff, is if the council has this prerogative, and I don't know if everyone's agreeing with me on my goals or ideas here, but why would we use a middleman and not just go to the nonprofits directly? I mean, it seems like we would want to outreach to Families Forward, to this provider that I took the tour of, the Orange County Rescue Mission, and go specifically to those, entities.
I think that's a great question. So in this instance, what you're looking for is that you're trying to leverage the $3.7 million that you have, and what a developer like National Corps brings to the table is that they will take this ENA and say, okay, we have some guaranteed funding from the city, and leverage that many times over. So 5 to 6 times over to build a fairly substantial project that includes all of the supportive services that were listed as part of this discussion. So what we're getting with a developer like National Corps is someone with the background and experience to build a much bigger and much more substantial project than the city could on its own, even if it went to those nonprofit providers.
So Lao Tzu said, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime. Sounds to me like you guys understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish in the city, and you are flexible based upon the needs of the residents, and I really appreciate that. I have full confidence that you'll do exactly what we're asking you to do, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract.
Second.
I'd like to substitute motion. And I don't mind going with the contract, but we've got to put in these items. I think you'd agree with me, no prevailing wages. I think that should be a goal of ours.
In fact, I think the things you're raising, which I think I'm going to agree with, are all items we would put in when they come back to us and say, listen, we can leverage your $4 million into $7 million if we do it this way and that way, and then we say, okay, and we want to boom, boom, boom. We think we'd rather focus on single women instead of veterans, we think, et cetera, et cetera. But at the moment, we're saying, as Carlos said, giving these guys, listen, with $4 million, go out there and see what you can do and how much you can bring back. So I don't disagree with you, but
The only problem is that I said this the last time before we did the scope, and so the proposal came back, and it was affordable housing, and it was the bands of income. And so I don't feel like, maybe I didn't...
housing is a band of income.
Not if you're in the model of helping the homeless. There's not income. If my understanding is there's not going to be these income levels. That's the research I've had. So either I need to speak up and be more proactive in making the motion, or we're kind of going to get back to where we're just kind of allowing the system to work. And
no, I think you raise an important point. In my mind, and mea culpa, I don't think of this as a homeless transitional housing project. I think we need affordable housing for kids in their 20s who are living with their parents who need a place to go. I think we need affordable housing for veterans. I think we need it for single moms. I think, for me, our need of affordable housing is a broader need. And so if these guys can come back and say, if we scope this for veterans, we can give you $12 million. If we scope it for single moms, we could give you $9 million. If it's seniors, we give you $6 million. If it's open, completely open, or if it's homeless, we could give you... In other words, I'd like to give them flexibility to come back and just show us everything they have, and then based on what we perceive the needs in the city, and based on the multiplier he's able to come up with, we would say, yeah, okay, if veterans for double the money, I'll go with that instead of homeless for 50% of the money. That's what's been going on in my mind, rather than this is a affordable housing project transitionally for homeless people. And I don't rule that out, but I'd rather see the whole thing and, maximum, and come back to us and say, the best way we can leverage your money is doing it this way.
Councilman Hamilton, are there specific goals or that you want to add to like a friendly amendment? Because I think when he came up, he talked about prevailing wage is already something that was on the radar screen.
Because you're going to be, if you go prevailing wages, as we found out, suddenly that $6 million can only get you, the cost becomes, so prevailing wages is a consideration, but I'm assuming these guys understand that, and they'll come back with pitching projects which take that into account.
I've been on a affordable housing, the Planning Commission, we had an affordable housing tour in Irvine. The Kennedy Commission brought it on, hosted this tour. And wow, the facilities they have in Irvine are just, amazing, right? I mean, they look like $750,000 condos. But they didn't use prevailing wage. And they get people in that rut. And so that's like the shiny, that's the shiny thing. And I don't know how, can you get, here's a question for you, I guess. Can you get tax subsidies on and use it? That was some of the proposals we saw. There were numerous tax subsidies up to, I think, 18 million or 24 million is what I remember in one of the quotes, and still go with a nonprofit. Like a Families Forward, like a Orange County Rescue Mission.
Sure.
House.
If I understand the question, I think there were two things that came up at the prior councilman. One is clear council direction separately from the timeline that's in this agreement before you, that to not develop a project that would trigger prevailing wage. That's probably the way I would, and because there are funding sources that would trigger it. Second, the tax credit program, which is what provides most of the private equity for projects, which was something established back in '86 under Reagan's administration, was a goal of not, instead of having HUD direct funding, having equity investments from banks and others to meet their community reinvestment requirement. That's part of what we would bring to the table. And I think that's the leveraged funding that's been mentioned. Those funds are available to do exactly what we've talked about tonight. It is very common for us to partner not only with our own resources but with a local nonprofit to provide the services because they have the local. Again, I think as it was stated, we, to the extent we would welcome, the council, if it's in the form of direction or a goal, we appreciate this early in the process. What we've been tasked with is come back with options, what the cost would be, bang for the buck, so to speak, what kind of programs, is it veterans families, is there a set aside for homeless families, but it was clear that the option of having a project, even if it was possible, that was entirely HUD vouchers, which would trigger prevailing wage, is not what the council was looking for. So I think there were, the task to us is to come back with that comparison, those alternatives, citing, and I think we have the best team. And I think I made the commitment at the last council meeting. I helped Jim Palmer get the Rescue Mission military base conversion. We got the pro bono charrette to think about converting military barracks to housing. So very familiar with that program, along with Tustin. We aren't at all stuck with, if there's something we can learn that we're not aware of, we'd welcome it. We want the same thing. We would want to do the next project in South County. And that's the accountability.
So I think I'll go ahead and make a substitute motion that incorporates the on-site parenting, child care, education, health care service, case management, counseling, job skills, legal services. Not that it has to necessarily meet all of those, but that's a goal of ours. A goal is having 18 to 20 more month turnover, no prevailing wages, cost per unit more in line, like with the best bang for the buck, kind of like the Orange County Rescue Mission, and not having income bans. And would you? So that's my motion. And question: would you be willing to at least reach out to the Rescue Mission? I mean, it seemed like a great program. I'm not saying.
I'm happy
it's
to.
like the.
Jim's a colleague, so no problem looking at whatever's there, and happy to do that. But I would say on the income bans, tax credit funding does have income bans. I mean, there's no one who would that proposed Rescue Mission, us, Bridge Housing. There is no one who could take could have a tax credit project without the income limits, because that's what comes with the money. They're not financing market rate. So we completely understand we don't want to create a ceiling for prosperity, and that might be a better way to put it. We are not trying to trap people and not have an incentive to make more money. But the funding comes, a tax credit fund comes with income limits, but we don't see that as a barrier to moving them, but no restriction on mobility and moving people out.
See, and that's where I have just a very, very, very strong opinion, is that these bans do limit people's ability to move. And to me, that's a deal breaker for me.
I think that the tour that he went to was Orange County Rescue Mission, and Jim is in their ability to not put them into that bracket. It doesn't. They feel. I think Councilman Hamilton thinks that with that HUD money, it puts a cap on their ability to move up and out. But I think that what was shown at Saguaro, that we had a family that was able to move up and onward. Just touch on that for me.
Well, I guess
briefly.
It could be, let's say 4 options come back to you. If you're asking, could one of the options be, and would be less leverage because it'd be less other sources.
Thank you, boys.
What would a project look like that doesn't have funding sources that create income bans? The $4 million's invested, let's say in an apartment building. How would that work? That can be one of the 4 options we present to you, and the council can decide. It will not have the leveraging kind of compounding effect, but it might meet other goals. We're not at all unwilling to show that as an alternative and have a side-by-side matrix or whatever comes back from the staff. We're very open to that.
But I think that's where they leverage the private donations. I mean, what was the big housing developer that practically refurbished the whole thing for free? I mean, it was whatever the home builder was. So,
sure.
To me, that's.
But I think, both Families Forward and Hope Through Housing and Mercy Out leverage private donations, and those donors want to see results. And now, I think in terms, so if you're talking about the ability to leverage, let's say, in-kind construction, the Habitat for Humanity model, and there they've done it on more of a corporate scale. That's in some ways it's a very powerful model. It's not usually done with public funding sources. That's usually, so if something's done kind of a private Habitat for Humanity model, usually there is no funding, whether it's $400,000 or $3.7 million. So that's generally.
Well, according to the Rescue Mission, they've done multiple projects: Buena Park, Tustin, multiple ones in Tustin. They've done one in Corona, all with private donations. And I'm probably not saying the name correctly, but I think it was Altman's, one of those. So, I mean, that's my motion. Is the model? I don't like the bans.
Well, is the suggestion that was made by Mr. Wayne to offer that as one of the options? that something that you'd be willing to accept? I mean, he's offering that, plus here are some other areas where you could use tax credits to leverage. So when I look at our overall conversation here, I think that we're talking about 3.7 million, whatever the exact number is, and we're talking about a federal issue where I think HUD is a mess. Affordable housing across the nation is a mess. Affordable housing in California is a mess. And housing values are ridiculously high in Orange County. If you looked at the income level of the average resident and said, were they trying to buy a single-family home right now, much smaller than half of residents of Lake Forest would actually qualify for the home that they're living in. They just happened to buy it 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So that's why they're living in the home. And so this is a really big problem that we're talking about, both on a national level and a regional level. On the regional level, we've kind of touched on homelessness a little bit. We're also looking at low-income housing, families, single moms, just a myriad of categories. And we've got $3.7 million. We don't have $3.7 billion. We don't have $3.7 trillion. And, we're talking about a fairly small project in the grand scheme of things, and we can't solve every problem. We can't attempt to. So, I think that with options coming back, if there's an option that meets the criteria that you're focused on, but there's also some other options that are being presented, then we can make that determination at that point of, do we want something that has no prevailing wage, but maybe we're not able to leverage tax credits, and there isn't as much dollars available, the project is X size, or we go a different route and we have a multiplier on the money of 3, 4, 5 times the number, and is that something that we all feel comfortable with? Under the assumption that I think we're all operating on here, that the focus is to try to get people to move on. When we were talking about the Saguaro property for a number of years in my first 3.5 before we actually got something done there, or 3, whatever it was, my 3 years on the council, it seemed like we talked about it probably close to a dozen times. I recall a family that had lived in that fourplex for quite some time. They didn't have that opportunity to move on. I'm so excited to hear that there's 1 out of 4, and we all share that same goal that we'd like to see 4 out of 4, and we'd like to see those 4 out of 4 flip as many times as possible, so that those units over a period of years can serve many, many families, helping them to move forward. But it's not as simple of a problem as just building housing. It's not as simple of a problem as just trying to find job placement. It's all of those things that you listed off, all of the nonprofits that are involved in this that can help a family move on. And, everything in the system fights against them. I think the comment that you made and has been echoed up here is 100% true, that the system is built in such a way that stay where you're at. If you're upwardly mobile in any way, it's like you're almost penalized. You have to significantly jump. You have to go from that 40,000 to the 90,000 to get to that market rate apartment. If you go from the 40 to the 50, or I don't know where the break is, but maybe it's 40 to 60, 40 to 70, then you hit this point where you no longer qualify for the affordable housing, right? But it's a real struggle at market rate. Maybe it's 40% of your annual family income. Maybe it's 50%. That number was just in the news this week about, number of families that 50% of their annual income is going to housing. So we're talking about a national problem and a regional problem that we can't solve tonight, and if we attempt to, then we're going to drive ourselves crazy. So, my guess is that the options that have been presented here by Mr. Wayne probably make sense. One will definitely address the focus that you have, and we're not deciding on a project today, but just a process for moving forward, and I think that we're getting there. So I hope that you might not have got everything that you want, but it's there's something there. There's an option, but you were working on a substitute motion. I don't want to take that from you, but I think that this has progressed beyond the consent calendar. Just move on and vote on it, and you've got something that you were looking for.
So,
There's no second, and there's a motion with a second on the floor.
Are you leaving your motion on the table?
I'll make another substitute motion.
Okay.
That everything that was enveloped in my first motion at least would be presented, and there'd be two options within your proposal toward that.
Okay, I'll second your motion for the sake of having a vote. So, do we know what that was?
Yeah, it's pretty much the original motion plus having options.
Well, can I make a suggestion? Is there a way that we could substitute motion onto the first and just a few of those options that you want to put on there and substitute on the first?
I think his option is included in that first motion.
I kind of thought it was too.
And I think he understands that that's in there already. It just we're asking, and bring us anything because we want multipliers.
You want it on the menu.
We want to look at everything.
So I'll reiterate
But
my
at
motion.
least that.
Yes. I'd like to hold the original motion with the understanding that you understand what we're asking for. It's a full umbrella of everything that has been discussed among all 5 council members. That's my motion.
Okay, that was seconded, but he made his motion. You want to repeat your motion again?
Yeah, my substitute motion was the motion that whoever made to my left, it was either a man or a woman, I can't remember, plus these additional items as an option, and there would be 2 of those when you come back.
Okay, I'll second his for vote.
All right, but why would you want 2? Maybe he can bring us back 5.
At least 2.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Okay, we're going to call a vote for the substitute motion.
That motion passes with Councilman Gardner opposed.
All right. So, and we got everything. Right. Okay. It is the same. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Moving on to item. Okay. Public hearing. At this time, I'd like to open up.
I'm sorry,
Mr. Mayor, we're on item 9.
We got another poll. I'm sorry, Jim. I forgot to circle yours.
Agenda item number 9, award of contract for design services for the Neighborhood Park Improvement Plan submitted by Director of Community Services and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Gardner.
I went to all these meetings. These are the neighborhood park meetings. And I was there early to talk to residents, and I stayed later to talk to residents. And I wrote summaries of all the meetings. So when I saw this RFP, I was amazed at how much money they're asking for. Because almost everything that I saw at all of these meetings was we want a new barbecue, we want a new bench, we want to put up a shade, we want maybe replace a couple of playground equipment, etc. And now I can go do that for free. I mean, what is there to? And we're paying $500,000 in consulting fees for somebody to draw up designs and say, here's a bench, and here's where it's going to go, and then to go out and talk to the people and say, you asked for a bench, and we're giving you a bench, and then the city's out $500,000. So this seems to me exorbitant. Well, so I tried to get a copy of the original report, which we never saw, which came back after the 10 ones were done. I tried to get it over the weekend so I could be better prepared tonight. But the city system seems to think I have a Macintosh. I don't have a Macintosh. I have a PC, so you can't send me DAT files. They're worthless. So I only got this today, and this is the report, the full report. And this is the abridged report. And it says more or less exactly what I said to you. Almost everything being asked for in this is replace a bench, replace this, that, and the other thing. There are a couple of extra things being asked for. Some people want dog runs. I suppose you have to design a dog run. Some people want exercise equipment. Well, you really don't, I don't know that you design exercise equipment. Some people want a rock climbing wall. You probably just buy a rock climbing wall. Some people want a tot lot. And there were 3 requests for basketball courts. But more or less, if there are 110 items being asked for here, most of them are, give me a new bench, give me a new barbecue, give me a new laundry. And we're going to spend $500,000 to have somebody draw that up. Put that aside for a moment, and let's see if what's in this report represents actually what's going on. And for that I apologize, because I haven't had enough time to pore over this report. But I did have a half an hour to pore over this report. And let me show you my results there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parks asked for restrooms. Well, at least it shows up here that the staff are asking us to build restrooms in Cherry Park, Darren Park, Beechwood, Rancho Serrano, and Vintage. They're all going to get restrooms. And that costs thousands of dollars, and then the guy's got to design it and draw your picture, so it's even more thousands of dollars, right? And I thought to myself, well, this is really funny, because I was at all those meetings.
Can I just...
Yeah.
You said Serrano, you mean Serrano Creek Park, right?
No, Rancho Serrano.
Okay.
Rancho Serrano. My scribble is... I probably saw the Serrano first. So 5 places wanted restrooms. And I thought to myself, I was at all those meetings, and I know that every so often somebody said restroom, and then the rest of the people pounced on them. And the rest of the people pounced on them because they said, it's our neighborhood park. If we need to use a restroom, we'll use our house.
Pounce meaning we didn't want the restroom.
We didn't want the restroom.
Okay.
And there were reasons for that. We don't want drug users in our restrooms. We don't want homeless people in our restrooms. We don't want sex in our restrooms. Some people objected to that, but that was the general consensus. And we don't want people driving here to use our restrooms. So at the end of every one of the discussions I was at, which was all 10 parks, we came out of them with no restrooms. Now, that was counterintuitive to me, because I would have thought you wanted a restroom.
Yeah.
But in fact, once it came out, it was pretty clear neighborhood people didn't want restrooms, and in fact, that's what I remember. So I'm really surprised when I see all the thousands of dollars, and this is just the proposal. This is just to draw the restrooms. This is not even the cost of them. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I thought to myself, well, how in the heck is my memory going, I know I've been sick for the last 3 weeks, so I'm on all kinds of antihistamines, and is my memory in a fog, or did I remember it correctly and something else funny is going on? So I started going through this, and I didn't do it for all. I could only do for 3, and that's all the time I had. In order to try to do a little detective work, why are we proposing restrooms when my impression is... So what do I find? I find in this big, long report on Cherry Park, it turns out from the people online who were asked, what on earth would you like in your park? 25% of them said, we'd like a restroom. At the meeting for Cherry Park, where they had restrooms on there, nobody wanted a restroom. But 25 people on an online thing, if you say, what would you like? They say, yeah, I'd like a restroom, just like I think I'd like a restroom. Darren Park, 16% online said they wanted a restroom. But in fact, the most starred thing on their meeting was no restroom. That got more stars than anything else. But somehow, the people who wrote this report are giving us a restroom in Darren Park. Then I got to Peachwood. Peachwood, 26% wanted restrooms online. And on the board, there were no restrooms. It didn't get stars, but at least it was on the room. And there was a note. Oh, and then the half. Okay. So basically, there's a disconnect between what people wanted and what shows up in here. Although I will concede, as I would have, without thinking, people would say, give me a restroom. And I would have said that too, had I not been at the meeting. But it was very clear from looking at what we documented and from my own memory that restrooms were not
Jim,
desired.
Ken,
Do you want me to wrap it up a little more?
well, no, I kind of, I think that our JM's here, Larry, that's you, Larry. And do we have anybody from the public here for the speaker for this item?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then Jim, go ahead. But kind of, if I may jump in real quick.
Well, let me finish, and then you can jump in. So, I don't think what came out of there and came out of here is being accurately reflected in here, and so I don't want to go ahead and approve money if that money is, going out to turn this into something when I don't think this adequately represents what happened in here.
Okay. Is there anybody else? I'm well aware, because I was involved with the soccer park that we have, this Lake Forest Sports Park, and I've been into the discussion. I was at a few of the meetings for the parks. When the neighbors come out, they've taken ownership of the parks that are in their neighborhoods or adjacent to their neighborhoods. And I think that as a city official and as a city council, that park represents a park of the city. And when it becomes a city park, you have children coming after preschool, or you have grandmothers taking their infants and their toddlers and with other children attached to you. And when it's a city park, I think restrooms are useful, because the fact is, if you have a grandma with a toddler there, where are they going to go in the bushes or go in their pants? I think that when it becomes a city park, not a neighborhood homeowners association park, I think that translation into it's a city park. I mean, there are going to be people that grandma and grandpa are going to take Jason and Susan to the park, and if one of them has to go to the potty, I don't think that they have to hop in the car and drive off to the gas station to take them to the potty. They're at a city park. So I think that this is something that we'll discuss more, and I think Larry with RJM, please come forward. I think that this is something that is a transition as we go through, and we'll take them one by one, but this is something that the scope of work does include parks, and we're having that same problem with the Regency Park. I think that, in the development agreement, that was supposed to be a restroom there too, and some of the community doesn't want a restroom, but the fact is that that's an allocated field for soccer play.
I understand you've asked Mr. Ryan a question. Actually, if I could briefly clarify the purpose of this report. We followed the same template that we followed 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, when we did the same thing. We rehabilitated 10 parks. We started by doing exactly what we did this time. We hired a consultant. We did what I call as listening and learning, and that's what this report represents. This report shows everything, every idea that people put down for a park, and it assigned a dollar value to that. But the intent wasn't to say, these are things, this is what won. When people put the dots up, this was the final result of what they wanted. So you're correct about the restroom. That matches my recollection as well, which is people showed up, they initially wanted restrooms, and then they talked themselves out of it. But in this process, we had 119 people show up to 5 workshops. We had 513 people take the online survey. And so out of all of that, we got about over 1,000, I want to say 1,050 comments on what people want in their parks. And not just what they want in their parks, how they use their park, when they use their park, what concerns do they have about their park with respect to parking or lighting or crime or things like that. That's what this was. And the way that we use this was simply to give us an idea of the scope of what we're talking about. When we talk about 10 parks and doing renovations, what are we looking at? And Larry can address this better than I, but half of what we're looking to do with renovating parks, it's trying to accommodate residents' requests as to the amenities that they'd like to see. The other half really has to do with giving the park a facelift. And there are other things that won't show up in here, and examples would be ADA improvements, accessibility improvements, lighting improvements, other things that require engineering. Some of the things that we see in here, the tot lots, everybody requested the spongy, resilient playground surfacing. That needs to be engineered. Because we've only done half of the outreach at this point, and we have another round of restrooms, another round of workshops, I can't guarantee that people won't show up and say, we want restrooms. We've thought about it. We've talked about it. There are 80 of us here. We want restrooms. I don't know that for sure. So that's why it's in this report, and that's why I'm considering that we might do restrooms. Other items that might need engineering would be the playgrounds, resilient surface, shade structures, walkways. We had a request to look at a spray pad. We have a park that has drainage issues that needs to be addressed. We had a retaining wall. We had one Regency. We're considering whether we want to look at a parking lot there. And then the basketball courts. Someone needs to provide the bid specs as to how to build a basketball court. But Larry, can you talk a little bit about the other side of refreshing parks, maybe, and what that means?
Well, first off, we're, I think, happy to be here. It's when the RFP came out and we saw the work that you've done to date, it's like, great, let's, we've done a tremendous amount of rehabilitation work in Mission Viejo. Most of the parks you see there have our hand stamp on them in a rehabilitative kind of way, and you can really tell the difference. So it's beyond just going out and swapping out play equipment for another piece of play equipment, because now you're looking at things that when these parks were originally developed wasn't even on the radar. Compliant path of travels, ADA access, the Consumer Product Safety Commission concern for, all the safety things, head entrapment, head fall distances, all that kind of stuff. The 2 to 5-year-old play versus the 5 to 12-year-old play. There's a litany of things, so it's not like I can just call in and go to landscape structures and say, give me new playground equipment. They're going to say, okay, what do you want to do? How much money? What do you want to, what's the play experience? What's the aesthetic? What's the theme? All that kind of stuff has got to be articulated. And then what we're trying to do is give you a document in the end result that you can then put on the street and get bids from. I mean, Mr. Gardner, you're very correct when you look at simple things like benches and trash and tables. Anybody could do that with the snap of the finger. And then you think about, oh, wait a second, I just can't order that bench. I've got a bench out there. I've got to go have someone demolish it. Who is this guy? And then when he demolishes that and he's going to put in the new bench, you have to, not everybody is good intentioned in the contracting industry. And so you have things like they're going to put in a new walkway, they put it on grade. That means they set their forms on top of the existing grade. And now the water doesn't flow through. So the drawings and the specs and the grading plans make sure that those walks are set into the grade and the proper removals are done. The geotechnical, the reinforcing is applied to the ground as well as the concrete and the reinforcing. And so there's a litany of things that go unseen. They're not very romantic, but it's what keeps you and me out of the liability issue with regard to stuff just being done willy-nilly in the field. It also gives you the ability to have multiple contractors give you prices for everything from the demolition through the new construction. So we're not trying to, we have a long-term relationship with the city and we value that. We're not trying to take advantage of anybody. We gave a very competitive cost proposal. We scored pretty fairly in the interview. We gave you a competitive cost proposal. When the city started to really bear down on, okay, exactly how are we going to do this, I believe Scott and Tom talked about, we don't really have base information. Of our fee, there's $68,000 of surveying work, aerial mapping to generate the topography, and the field guys out in the field identifying what the real grade conditions are so that when we generate construction documents for these park improvements, they're real. If we talk about removals of soil or grading, we've got good data to corroborate the specifics on the earthwork. So there's not big change orders. There's not, oops, I didn't know about that. So there's a litany of stuff that's included in that fee, and basically, we stuffed in another $68,000 that if you really dive into these other proposals, I doubt you'll find the same type of provision for that type of work. And if $68,000 isn't seen as that expenditure seen as a necessary evil, we're happy to pull it out, but then we're relegated to using images from Google Maps. And now you start talking about, compliant path of travel and grading and ADA compliance, and it's like, I don't have the topo, I don't understand what the grades are to be able to even tell you where the walk needs to articulate to get from A to B in a compliant gradient. So I wouldn't come to you with a Google Map proposal. I would jeopardize our relationship. You'd look at Tom, look at me like I was a potato head. You know better. You know what we got to do to get this built. So we put it in the way our 20-plus years of experience working with Lake Forest has borne success.
I'm prepared. We actually have before us right now a contract that's out that is coming back to us again and again and again. And because they didn't do the foresight in the scope of work to actually analyze thoroughly. And I appreciate that in you. And I know that your firm was the firm for the Lake Forest Sports Park. And I think that because of the complexity of that and the amount of dirt that was moved and graded into that project and what we've got out of that, I'm prepared to go with staff recommendations. I'll make a motion that we accept RJM.
Before you do, though...
I'm making a motion,
Yeah.
but we're open for discussion.
Can I?
You bet, yeah.
So I appreciate your comments very much, and I'm going to try and bridge the gap here. I don't think Councilman Gardner, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he was criticizing necessarily the vendor at all. I think you were saying the scope of work that the staff was not in line with the I think you're saying if the scope of work in the staff report is, in your opinion, accurate, you thought it was probably the vendor, was going to do a good job and had good pricing and everything. You're saying the scope of work wasn't in line with what you were experiencing at the community meetings, and therefore that's why you didn't think it was. So I don't.
Well, I didn't take any. Okay. I didn't think he had any concern with us. It is difficult to, and this is what we do, community input. You could walk out of that meeting and have many different people with many different perceptions of what was said and done. And when you then go in to build something, it's like, holy smokes, I hope we have the right understanding or the same conclusions drawn. The way we're envisioning this is we're going to get that good detailed base information, and we're going to put together the representative information that's based on that earlier document and bring it back to the community and say, okay, look, this is what we heard. This is how this is sifting out or how it's aligning to go forward. Does this represent your vision, your goals that you've shared previously? And
so the point I was making, and at least Councilman Hamilton understood, is what that's based on is not what came from the community meetings. Now, I managed to find out, and I only looked at restrooms, I'm sure it would be true with everything else too, how it snuck in there. But
are you saying that the online survey is, I'm not trying to make you a conspiracy theorist here,
no.
But, online is not in line with the
some issues, it may be because I thought everybody should have a restroom too. But once I got there, it was pretty clear to me that nobody wanted restrooms. Then that became clear to me that just asking that online, that kind of weight shouldn't be given to it as it was in this report, because those people didn't have the benefit of the kinds of discussions that happened in every single group.
So,
by the way, I thought staff responded well.
Scott, we want you to go in. And in conclusion here, I think that can you lay out if we grant this is a design imagery, and that we're still going to go back to the community for final approval, and go out and outreach to what we have.
That's correct. Technically, this is based on half of the outreach at this time. So we have more outreach to do. This report compiles everything that people talked about, and it gave a dollar amount to every amenity were we to do that at every park. Dr. Garner is absolutely correct that, generally speaking, people decided they talked themselves out of the restrooms at the end of the night. I included it in here because if we do another round of community input, and people decide that they want restrooms, and I know that they're expensive to build, they need to be engineered and designed, I don't want to come back to council and say, I didn't include them, I assume that they wouldn't be done. I can't make that assumption.
So you're saying it's easier to put the restaurants in the first design than have to add after the design's part?
They're not going into the design. They're included in the scope of work for the purposes of the bid proposal because we may have people that want restrooms. Okay. The other thing the point I want to make about the online survey, I agree with Dr. Gardner that 119 people show up to the meetings, right? 500 people contribute their comments online. There's a discrepancy, and I don't know how to say one is right and one is wrong. I tend to agree that the people that show up to the meeting, they speak louder, but we still have 1,000 comments that we collected from folks online, which is why I consider that the community outreach is only half done at this point.
The point is not that they speak louder, but they discuss the issue, and they see, just as I would have said I wanted a restroom, but when you discuss it, it changed, and it changed every time.
So there's a motion made, and I'd like to just...
Well, I haven't had a chance to say anything.
Okay, please.
Not that all of us have to speak on every issue, but with this one, I think it's important. There's well, I want to start with talking about scope of works. So we've been talking about RFPs and scope of works on a number of issues over the last few months. And in 2014, we actually, the City Council used to actually approve every RFP. It showed up in the consent calendar. But no one ever read them. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know whether anyone ever read them, but no one ever commented on them. We didn't have the public comment on them. Council members didn't comment on them. And it was, I don't know how many extra tens, hundreds of pages in the staff reports. So in 2014, we decided to pull them. I think that's something that needs to change again, but my admonition to us would be if we're going to include them in the staff report that we actually read them, we actually ask questions, and we actually make sure that if there's a change that we want to see, that we make that decision at that point rather than once the bid comes to us, whatever it might be. I think that's a little bit of what we're discussing here. Secondly, there was some discussion about both the positives and negatives of bathrooms. We had someone at the last meeting who came and talked about Village Pond Park, Veterans Park, wanting a bathroom there. And, it reminds me of the old line about California, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, right? Playground equipment's for sliding and bathrooms are for fighting. Mission Viejo, I know, has had council agenda items where they've talked about building bathrooms and had, dozens of people show up and scream and yell about it. Not because they don't want the positives of what a bathroom can provide. The little kid that's with grandma and grandpa that needs to use one and they don't want to pick them up, put them in the car and drive them home or drive them somewhere, right? But there's a lot of negatives that occur that, Councilman Gardner brought up. And those are legitimate concerns in a community. And so, I think that the comments that have been made by both Mr. Wasserman and Councilman Gardner about the whole process of how we're getting input with respect to these and then how we weigh that input, I think is really important here. Because as you both mentioned, there's a little over 100 people showing up at the community meetings. There's some real dialogue. Someone comes and says, hey, you know what, I'm interested, I hadn't thought about all those negatives. I just thought about the positives, right? And so then their mind changes, whereas the static information coming from, an online survey, which, hey, people need to be communicated to in a variety of different ways. We've been criticized for that on a number of occasions here, that we only take it in one way. So that's important, but how do we weigh that information, right? And that's what Mr. Wasserman and the staff have been trying to do is weigh that. And I think that, what we're up here discussing is was the proper weight given to each one of those? There was no dialogue, there was no discussion, there was no opportunity for a mind to be changed online where there was in person, right? And yet, if we weigh the two equally, then you've got 4 to 5 times as many people contributing online. So, yeah, that's going to be what wins out. And is that the right and proper way to make a decision like this? I'm not really sure. And I would say if we put in 5 bathrooms, we're going to have some people that are really, really upset. Okay? And we're also going to have some people that are very thankful, right? And it's something that can divide, a little neighborhood park and the people surrounding it for sure. But those discussions need to be had. So, right now, I'm okay with moving forward with where we're at, but I think that we need to be cognizant of that and the fact that, this isn't locked in stone, and, some of these things that are being discussed here need a lot more community input, and we need to try to figure out how we're going to properly weigh that input, because if we're solely looking at that online stuff, a vast majority of those people that clicked the bathroom checkbox, I'm guessing that's what it was, right? They didn't type it in, right? So we're giving that option there, and they're just thinking of the positives. And if you just had one brief discussion, right, about, hey, remember that one incident? Oh, yeah, we don't want a bathroom, right? That could easily happen, and it might not, but it could easily happen. And just like you were swayed, I've had the same, I've been in the same position that you were, where I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love one. You know what? Hadn't thought about that, right? And so, what was brought up 2 weeks ago was also, yeah, okay, so how do you mitigate against those potential negative consequences? How do you find a way to, are they self-locking? Or, what are all those issues that you can address? Can you remove enough of those negatives so the cost-benefit analysis comes out positive, right? I don't know the answer to that at this point, but, so it's been a good discussion. I'm looking at it more from a higher level rather than just this one agenda item, and trying to take a look at, where are we stuck here? And I think it's that scope of work and how we're weighing community input.
Mayor Pro Tem Basil.
Yeah, just real quick. Mine dovetails on that. I had a couple of notes written, and it reflects similar to what he was just saying. My question kind of revolves around the community outreach portion. Obviously, we will be doing more outreach, and I know in the past that's been a concern of members of council about our level of outreach to the community and how much involvement we can actually get from the residents. A thought was, if we're going to continue with the online system, maybe in the online questionnaire, where it comes to things that could be contentious, like a restroom, you actually provide them with the question, and then below, pros to having a restroom, cons of having a restroom. So for those that are not able to attend the community meetings and hearing the actual feedback coming from the residents, they'll be able to read their comments in the online portion. So maybe that would help if we can somehow tailor the online portion to be able to do that, to make it more subjective instead of us just seeing a black and white question, yes or no. Just a
Great suggestion. So I make, please.
I just wanted to thank, I think you had a great response. I kind of got this out earlier, but I think it might have been double over somebody, so thank you for your response. But you know what? For parking permits, we require 80% or something like that of the residents, whatever the number is. It's a high number. So, maybe we require some kind of threshold like that. I mean, that we have a precedent for that.
Okay.
But I appreciate your comments, and I'd be interested in, are you supporting his motion, or?
It hasn't been seconded, so I'm looking for a second. Motion made.
Well,
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, second made. Okay.
Before you vote, I'd love to know what you're going to do.
Well,
I wish, going back to what Councilman Robinson said, it's a systemic problem. We often are in this situation where we're making a decision on less than adequate information for a variety of reasons, starting for... and
this isn't the end of the discussion only, so we're going to have more community...
No, but I'm asking.
He's asking. Yeah, and I feel as if this is it's not responsive to what I'd prefer that we were voting on a better document, so I'm going to vote no.
Well, can you make a substitute that would, I'm empathizing with what you're saying.
Well, there's been motion made and seconded, so I'm just going to call the vote, so. Cast your votes.
I'll lose.
Please cast your votes. Yeah.
That motion carries.
Congratulations.
What was the vote?
I'm sorry. That motion carries with council members Gardner and Hamilton opposed.
Okay, we're going to take a intermission. Well, you just go. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hello? If I could get staff and council back to the dais, and we'll continue this meeting with our public hearing. Okay, so this brings us to the public hearing, and I'd like to open up this public hearing and receive staff report.
Mayor and Council, our staff report will be provided by our City Clerk, Stephanie Smith.
All right, welcome back already.
Yes, back by popular demand.
Yes, that will be the popular demand.
This is the transition to district-based elections, introduction of the ordinance. As you are aware, Council, we started on this journey back in May of 2017 with the adoption of a resolution of intention. Since that time, we've conducted 5 total public hearings to receive input from the public on the boundaries of the district map and the potential sequencing of the elections in 2018 and 2020. We also held 2 community workshops where approximately 30 residents attended over the course of the 2 workshops to provide input and to learn how they can provide input into the process. At the public hearing on November 21st, that's a different agenda item, by the way. At the public hearing on November 21st, the council selected a map for adoption for district boundaries, and that was map 116B. They also selected districts 2, 3, and 4 in 116B to appear on the ballot in 2018, and districts 1 and 5 to appear on the ballot in 2020. This action tonight is the introduction of the ordinance that will actually codify that decision. It is a public hearing, so at this point that concludes my presentation. If the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But staff recommends that you take input from the public on the adoption of the ordinance and introduce the ordinance if that's council's will.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Stephanie? Or I will open up to the public. Okay.
Had no requests.
Is there any questions from Ms. And then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we're going to have council comments.
I think we've talked through this enough, so.
Okay.
We don't have a full council here, but I will, I don't know how the votes have gone. It might be best if we just try to get everybody back here, so.
Here comes one.
Okay.
Did you moving the item?
I'm going to move the item, move staff recommendation.
Second? Okay. Okay. Then I'm going to call the vote with everybody, with Mayor Pro Tem Basil and a necessity break still. So we just want to wait a few more minutes?
Yeah, meantime, let me ask the attorney, so all the other things we have to do, the language and everything we will do next year, right, to go on the ballot?
That's correct, Dr. Gardner.
We don't need to do it this year?
That's correct.
This is the only thing that meets the requirement that ultimately gets us out of the threat of the lawsuit?
This followed by a second reading at a subsequent meeting, which would codify the ordinance. It takes effect immediately. That then avoids liability. We, of course, have to then pay fees and costs of bringing the letter. But besides that, that's correct.
So even for the letter, we're still open for those fees?
The California Voting Rights Act allows a plaintiff's counsel who brings a letter to get access to costs and fees for bringing that letter.
So we can expect sometime next year we'll get a letter and it'll come through with his fee schedule and we'll have...
Yeah, based on what I've seen, that letter tends to come days after second reading, and there's an itemized bill attached to the letter.
Oh.
So motion on the floor.
It's been motion and second just to move staff recommendation and get this done with. And so I'm going to call the vote, please. We're all here now.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. I'm glad we've spent a lot of time on this in past months because some of us aren't in favor of district elections. So
myself included.
And myself included. So this brings us to discussion items. Item number 13.
Agenda item 13, grant consulting services submitted by Assistant to the City Manager.
Mayor and members of the council, I will turn it over to the Assistant City Manager, Carlo Tomaino.
Thank you, and good evening again, Council. So as you may recall during your last budget adoption process, you expressed an interest in the possibility of hiring, retaining a grant consultant for the purpose of offsetting some general fund expenditures. And as mentioned during that discussion, compensation for these services potentially would be provided as a percentage of any new grant that the consultant obtained on behalf of the city. Based on that discussion, we prepared an RFP and provided that RFP to 6 firms, and during the comment period for the draft RFP, the potential consultants noted that the proposed compensation structure was not necessarily prevalent within the grants industry. So more commonly, grant consultants are either paid on a monthly retainer, a pre-negotiated fee, or on a time and materials contract. The city nonetheless received 2 proposals in response to the RFP, and while both firms demonstrated their ability to perform the work, neither firm's cost proposal was directly responsive to the city's request. For this reason, we brought this item back to the City Council for further discussion or direction if so desired. So with us this evening are Dan Bartleson. He's with Evan Brooks and Associates. And also we have Mr. Steve Samuelian, who's with California Consulting. I'm sure that they would be happy to answer questions about their companies relative to this issue. Additionally, of course, staff is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Do we have any public?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so Evans and Brook is here, and they're the ones that have been recommended. Who's here to represent them? Dan?
We have Mr. Dan Bartleson.
Okay. Council, do you have any comments as we're coming forward?
Sure. I brought this item up. You know, I think that it's important that we start looking at grants. We had an inclusion of grants with a lobbying bid maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and you know, at the time I wasn't supportive of it for a number of reasons. We were in the midst of trying to lobby the Assembly with respect to our redevelopment agency and dealing with the DOF, and so I chose to stick with the existing lobbying firm that wasn't providing the grant funding. But I think it makes sense for us to try to go out there and look for grants beyond the ones that the staff does on a regular basis, which are one of the ones we voted on tonight, some M2 dollars and OCTA grants and things like that. You know, all the grants that come from some of those sources. I think that we go after some public safety grants from time to time, but there's some that, you know, elude us. There is a specialty that grant writing firms out there can assist with. The thing that made the most sense to me was to try to find out if we get a percentage of the grant goes to the grant firm, the grant writing firm, and I understand that that's not common practice. My understanding is that actually in the industry it's frowned upon, maybe even in some cases their industry or trade association considers it to be ethically challenging, just with how it all comes out. But my understanding is that it's not illegal. None of the firms chose to move that direction, and I'd be happy for the firms to comment on any questions that you all have. But from a fairness perspective, I think that, you know, we've basically told their entire industry that what we wanted was something that was percentage based. There were 6 companies there. 4 came back to us. Well, 4 came back to us and stated that they don't do that right. They don't. And then we ended up with 2 that actually put together a bid, but that wasn't you know, responsive to how we had structured the cost proposal. I don't know if the 2 were included in those 4, so if they commented but they still bid, or if they were the 2 that didn't. But regardless of that, I think that you know, as much as I'd like to move forward as quickly as possible, I think from a fairness perspective and from a consistency perspective, it makes more sense for us to probably go out again. There wouldn't be much of a change in the RFP itself. It's just the language with respect to, and I would focus on the time and materials rather than a retainer agreement. And you know, that's the direction I think that we should head. I understand that there's a somewhat of a staff recommendation here, not fully. There's also a receive and file, but so clearly no one should be expecting that we are going to absolutely be moving forward today. And I think that both of the firms provide a very valuable service. I think they're both very good. I know that there was a point spread there, but I know that both of them have worked throughout the Southern California and California region obtaining grants, so I would expect that they'd definitely be in the running, and I'm not trying to intentionally delay this anyway. I just think that's what makes the most sense and the most fair way of doing that. So
I too supported the grant writing for the city of Lake Forest. I think there's many grants out there that could be a benefit to the community of Lake Forest. And of the two, I guess you're here. Do you have a lot of Orange County cities? Do you have any Orange County cities?
We do have some Orange County cities, specifically City of Placentia, as well as the City of Santa Ana that we've done work with, as well as OCTA. Large majority of our clients are up in Los Angeles County, though.
Okay, so well, how many dollar amount have you written grants for?
Well, the total that our agencies that we've worked with have received is over $130 million. 130. It's various projects.
How many employees do you have?
We have less than 10 employees.
And how long have you been in the grant writing business?
Myself, I've actually been a city employee. I actually sat on these folks' side for about 15 years. Went into the private sector, got a chance to be a lot closer to home, so I can appreciate where the city clerk is coming from. But our firm itself has been operating since 2010, Evan Brooks Associates, and then prior to that, the owner of the firm was working for another company for about another 5 years prior to that. So overall, they've been providing grant resources for over 10 years.
Okay. And I concur with Councilman Robinson. I would like to be able to work. I know that you did a very generous time and material, as so did, I think, the other provider, which was California. Do you not prefer to go with the percentage of grants, or is it something that's awkward to the, because the industry, we didn't get any re-goers back on that, so it's something that we as a council kind of sought after. That way it would be a reward and not to where you
I think our comrades, California Consulting, would agree. It's pretty unique, although we are seeing a lot more organizations that are going that way. I got to read what Dr. Gardner had said. He wrote grants for about a year, and he obviously recognizes, the difficulty in writing a grant, and especially telling that appropriate story to be able to get funding. Certainly, I think what you risk when you go for a percentage or a performance-based contract is that you start getting a firm that's strategic in what they apply for versus applying for what the city needs. So we start looking at applying for what we know we're going to get, because then we know we're going to get paid, versus taking that slight risk. There's always a risk in business in proposing a cost for a service, and we know with most of our proposals they're fixed fee, and so if it goes beyond our normal fees, well, we eat that cost. But again, relative to that performance base, we don't want to shortchange any agency we work for, and therefore, the performance base is just, it's difficult. I mean, certainly it's workable in certain circumstances, and I think, I'm not going to stand up here and have a negotiation session on what makes the most sense from a performance standpoint. It could work, but I think there's a lot of caveats to it.
Okay. If other council members, we have another. Is the other people here? Yes. California Consulting.
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay, yeah, please.
I did this for a year right after I got my doctorate, and I did very well. I usually charge about 25 or 33%, and then build myself in as a consultant. But you're right, it was niche. I did niche stuff. I knew how to get about 6 or 7 federal grants, and then that's what I did for people. I didn't go into an agency and what do you need? It was like, if you need this, I can get you a HIP grant or a HIS grant or an NCA grant, or that's what I can do. And then I'd go out and do it. Do you guys have niches, though? In other words, could you say, oh, we're able to get you, this is what we do really well and fast, and we're pretty sure, although there's no guarantees, that if you wanted this because we got it for them, and these are the kinds of things we really specialize in?
We are a transportation consulting firm. So not only do we do a lot of grant writing, but we also do a lot of transportation planning. So your bike master plans, your active transportation plans, those are the sort of things that we're going to be doing. Also, we do a lot of safety analysis. We have engineers on staff, planners on staff, GIS members on staff, and that's something that we know that the city staff appreciated, is the fact that our firm, albeit small, certainly is full service in our ability to offer a lot of different type of services. As such, we also are able to really go broad spectrum with what we apply for. We certainly can apply for those federal grants, although instead of going against your local cities or your California cities, you're going national. So, competitively, federal grants tend to be a lot more competitive. But we've gone after federal, state, local grants. We're highly familiar with, water, parks, infrastructure, safety, almost you name it, we've been successful in doing it.
Just
Mayor Pro Tem
just
Basil.
real quick before I apologize to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I could continue the conversation there. And I think that was a very good question. I think that as we're looking at trying to accelerate this, there's a possibility that out of the 6, and maybe there's more companies out there that provide this service, that you're going to have different niches. And it's possible that when we want to focus on a transportation one, maybe that's your focus. I don't know what California Consulting's focus is, but maybe one focuses on park and recs, and one focuses on public safety, and one focuses on transportation. I know that you all try to be full service because you want to, but you all have a specialty, right? You have an area of expertise, and so I think that was a very, very good question.
And to maybe address the Councilmember Robinson and Dr. Gardner, and again, I don't want to get away, but I can sense where the City Council is going. I've been here before. A lot of communities do tend to look at benches because they do see those niche firms that are able to provide certain services. And so you will see a community that selects multiple firms to be able to provide. And then individually they provide a proposal each grant call. So you have, let's see, ATP Cycle 4 is coming out next spring. So you would have Firm A, Firm B, and Firm C be able to provide you, your staff, a proposal. You would evaluate which firm you wanted to write it. So they can be placed on a bench and be able to serve, and they would have only an agreement once they were selected based on that proposal. So certainly that is something that's an option to you, although, again, a lot of us are full service, so we can do a lot of different types of grants.
Yep, thank you very much. And Mayor Pro Tem Basil, I really apologize.
Mayor Pro Tem Basil now.
That's okay. That's all right. So I'm inclined to agree with Councilman Robinson that in no way does it make me question your ability to do the job. It sounds like you're very, accomplished. However, in the light of fairness, the fact that we sent out an RFP for a percentage-based commission program, and the bids we got back were for an actual time and service, I think that it would be doing a disservice to the city and the residents to not bid out the process again, just to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and getting the umbrella of companies to come back in and apply. But my question to you was, our RFP was commission-based, but you still submitted your RFP. Just curious, why did
Standard? Twofold. I mean, standard is certainly one of them, but if you read through the RFP, and I know you had a discussion about RFPs and reviewing just a few minutes back, but the RFP itself did speak to the percentage-based, but also there were additional components that were time and materials-based. And so it's difficult to be able to try and address one and try and address the other, especially when you're talking about funds management, a potential retainer or strategic grant planning with your staff. Certainly that's not going to be performance-based, because that would mean we'd be doing a lot of work for free. We probably wouldn't be in business, and I don't know if my wife would want me to go to work if they weren't paying me. So I think that there was a little bit of a hiccup in that respect. Maybe two separate cost proposals, one just for writing grants and the other for those other services. Okay. But that might have been part of the issue.
Okay. If I can add something to, since you made the motion.
No, it wasn't a motion. We're still discussing the other.
Oh, you did? Okay.
There's another firm out here.
The other thing I wanted to just quickly say was, if we do bid to go back out to RFP, I would like to clearly state, that we want a full-service company, but I would like each company to list its exact specialty. Maybe that would help us when we are making a decision if we go that route.
Okay. Anything further, or I'll invite Mr.
I just was.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I just had one more question, and it was just real quick. You said less than 10 employees. I think your website says 8. I did a little research. How many would you say of your employees, or what percentage of the, maybe give us FTEs? Do you have 2 that do grants and maybe 2.5?
We actually have, we have 4 people. The president and managing partner, myself, we actually have a grants administrator, and then we do have another person who actually is doing community outreach. They came from the nonprofit sector where they were actually writing grants. So they're kind of, in limbo. So when we need them, or when there's a significant grant call, or if there's a specialty, that niche that somebody may have, we can certainly pull them in. They came from the public health sector, so they do have a lot of history.
Great,
there.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming tonight. Now, California Consulting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city manager, Steve Samuelian. I'm the owner of California Consulting. Glad to be here this evening with you. And
Dan Rodriguez, the director of operations.
Dan Rodriguez. Okay, I guess I start off with the questions to Dan here. What year? How long have you been doing grants?
We opened the company, my wife and I, in 2004.
In 2004.
Yes.
Do you and how many dollars-wise have you given in grants, written in grants?
Altogether, all the money we've brought in since we opened in 2004 through federal, state, private foundation, local entities, we brought in almost exactly $1.6 billion.
1.6 billion. Do you have any Orange County cities that are actually yours?
Yes, we have contracts with Tustin, Aliso Viejo, Laguna Niguel, Westminster, Brea. Yes.
Now, Chris, your employees, how many employees do you have?
We have 33 team members, some of which are employees, some of which are independent contractors. We're the largest grant writing firm in the state, and we've been around since, as I mentioned, 2004. And we have a model of bringing in more money for our clients than our clients pay us. So we have a very high ROI, return on investment. That's how we've grown each year since 2004. We've had growth every year by bringing in significantly more money, 5, 10, 15, 20 to 1 dollar-wise for our clients.
Now, in the earlier discussions, there was the talk came up, especially, do you have a specialty niche, or do you guys have a broad base?
We've had, are we 830, what?
834 grants.
We've had 834 grant applications we've written that have been awarded for our clients. And we have that list readily available. So looking at that list of 834, you'll see police, fire, community development, economic development, parks and rec. You'll see grants on there for playground equipment, playground cover, fire trucks, police motorcycles. I shouldn't say wet restrooms, but restrooms. Lighting for parks, running tracks, soccer fields. So we're at 834. And that total changes just about every week. It increases just about every week.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to open it up to the rest of the council. Councilman Gardner, or did they have any questions?
I agree with what everybody has said.
Go ahead.
In the staff report, it said that the, I'm just going to call you EB. Is that okay? EB had...
That's what you were in the staff report, by the way.
EB had like this add-on for grant administration. They could use a CPA. It has to happen right now. Do you have a similar add-on for like the technical, staff had kind of given them a little bit more weight because they had, potential technical, what is your response to that comment?
Yes, Councilman. So we do post-award compliance reporting and administration. At California Consulting, and Dan could speak to this very with specificity, the company has administered major federal and state grants doing the post-award compliance, the reporting, and the administration. And we have a history of doing that. So, Dan, if you want to comment.
And I'm sorry, I meant like they had an add-on using an independent, it sounded like an independent contractor or a CPA doing their
grant administration, what you just answered, do you have that same thing for the technical, like the things that they had? Does that make sense?
Yeah, specifically, that's contained in the team already, so we maintain that capacity outright.
Okay, and how many people do you have that in that area?
It depends on the grant that we're going after, so it could be 3 to 4 people, it could be 4 to 6 people based on their expertise.
So you would counter that you have, sounds like if they have 8 employees and you had 4, they have 4 grants, you have a similar technical...
So of our 33 team members, we have 20, or we have 23 or 24 of them are grant writers and grant administrators. So we're not top-heavy. We don't have a lot of clerical staff or management staff. We have 4 management team members out of our 33 team members. So.
One of my concerns are we as a city made it pretty evident that we kind of wanted a percentage back. Now, was there a reason why that you chose to time and material, or are you willing to go with percentage base? I mean, that was the request. Were you prepared to put that in the RFP, or why did you put time and service?
Yeah, well, I was directly responsible for the writing and working with a small team, so the consideration was to look at the percentage, not the norm in the field. And so we shied away from that and thought that if we could proceed with just the consideration around the retainer and or per grant option, that just made the most sense for our firm. In light of your question, though, the ability to negotiate a percentage is definitely on the table. We are open to that idea.
Okay, so that's what is actually requested upon it, and now that, because EVA also stated that, so that was my other thing, but in my discussions
25
with...
used to work for me. Just tell them 25 used to work for me.
Who?
25%. Worked for me. I made a living doing it.
We like you, Dr. Gardner.
So I actually, was that a negotiated price?
25% of the 1 point whatever billion.
Yeah,
that would have been. That'd be a nice.
Yeah, I would be happy with that, guys.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
You know, congratulations, and you know, you guys are actually everything I've heard of. But and looking at your website, staff report put it down that San Fernando is under EBA. Is there a misclassification? Because I think that it's on your website. Is San Fernando on, or was that on Townsend's?
I'm not sure. I can't speak to EBA. I'm sure their representative can answer that. I know we have a contract for grant writing with the city of San Fernando.
San Fernando?
Yes.
Okay. And then the city of Placentia is actually with Townsend Associates, and you have it down as EBA. So there was a miscommunication there or something, because I talked to Mr. Jeremy Yamaguchi the other day, and he said that Chris Townsend was there's grant writing services. So there was some confusion there, but if you guys, I don't know, Councilman Robinson, do you still want to go with percentage-wise?
Well, at this point, the bids have come back. I mean, you know, it's. I appreciate the offer, but this isn't the place for negotiation, obviously, as you know. You know,
so
just being involved in this. So, you know, the motion. I mean,
as
much as we might like to do it, sometimes, you know, it's
yes, and we weren't trying, Councilman. We were responding to a question.
No,
understand.
It was a joke on my part, but
understand completely. But you know, I think that as I mentioned at the get-go, I just wanted everyone to have a chance to talk, but. You know, the motion that I have is that we just move forward with changing the RFP around to a time and materials, and then we call out the comments that Mayor Pro Tem Basil made with respect to knowing what niche each of you have. And I understand you have 834 grants, and you have probably, you know, hundreds in your cadre, but I would say that you know, there's got to be a niche somewhere in there. You just give us, and it could be multiple, but you know, here's your priority. This is our top, and we've done, you know, 70 grants here and here and here and here. And also, you know, I think that where there's going to be the most value is understanding exactly what we need. I don't know how much that was called out in the scope, because frankly, I didn't take a look at it since it wasn't on the agenda. But I'm not really sure that police bikes and fire trucks apply to us because we contract out that service, and then the other is paid through property tax. So that's not something that would really apply to us. The things that do, clearly, park and recs, transportation. We're really focused on roads, and so. But yeah, if you have any other comments,
just Mayor,
bike trails. Bike trails is something we have 2 bike trails, and we have 2 creeks in our city. So obviously, those are the kind of things that. And then we have transportation needs too for the grant writing for transportation. Now, if we were to table this, are there grants that are before? I just want to get grant writing up and going. Is there grants that are time-based, that are pertinent to time? That I'd rather have one of you 2 firms on board sooner than later.
Right now, because we write for over 86 public agencies across the state, we have contracts. That's what makes us the largest in the state. We have 86 or 87 public agencies, cities, school districts, water districts, special districts that we have contracts with. We are writing right now several grant applications for those many agencies. There's 2 in particular off the top of my head that would address your question of imminent, what's coming up imminently. There's a Baseball Tomorrow MLB grant that we're writing for several cities that's due January 1st that funds dugouts, batting cages, backstops, lighting at fields, turf. We've had dozens of those funded for various cities across the state. And then there's an LWCF State Parks grant, which is due February 5th, 2018. I'm not sure if the city has ever applied for that, but we would ascertain that information when we did our needs assessment and inventory. The LWCF grant due February 5th, 2018 funds trails, it funds park rehab, playground equipment, it funds playground cover, it funds outdoor amphitheaters, it funds basically anything that's outdoor recreational in nature. It's a $2 million maximum grant. There's a 50% match on that. And California Consulting has written several that have been funded for cities up and down the state. We'd have to look at our list to see how many we've had funded, but I know we've had many funded.
So that's very timely to us because of the upgrades in parks. If you sat here through the whole agenda, our whole council, we actually have 10 parks that are coming up for agendizing that we're updating our parks and moving forward with that. We have trails, and so I'm prepared. There was a motion on the table.
There is, and I can appreciate the fact that there are things that are right around the corner, but I would also suggest that there are always things right around the corner. No matter when you do this, they just keep coming in a cycle, So I think that the fairness component is the part that's most important to me. We're going to move forward with this for sure. There's no question about it, and this is something that I think we need to focus on. I've mentioned it. I know some of you have mentioned it as well. But we're a donor city and a donor county, right? And we're giving our tax dollars are going to D.C. They're going to Sacramento, and we're not getting back the percentage that we should. So the more we fight for that, and the more that the ROI is there, then that's something that we need to focus on because it's not that we're in dire straits. We're a very fiscally conservative and well-run city, but those tax dollars that are being spent by our residents deserve to be to come back in some sort of community benefit, and we need to make sure that we're fighting for those. And so, that's the whole purpose of this entire exercise. And I appreciate both of you the time that you've spent responding to the RFP. And I was hoping that it would come back the way it did, but maybe this time and materials is going to work out just as well. So it looked like Mr. Tomayano might have had a comment that he wanted to make, so I just want to give him that opportunity, and I'm done speaking.
Mayor and Council, I just wanted to offer a quick clarification. I believe there was a question from the Council generally about sort of a needs analysis, and a funding needs analysis was included in the original scope, so we would work with the consultant on a time and materials basis to develop a funding needs analysis so that we all know that we're pursuing the right grants, because there are a number of grants for which the city, we're not a disadvantaged community, we would not qualify for. So we have to be very selective in what we target. So that's part of the scope, and I just wanted to mention that that would continue to be part of the scope so that we're ensuring that our dollars are being spent in the most appropriate method to pursue grants.
So,
and real quickly, that was my whole intent with the percentage, right? If you're pursuing something as a contractor for us that we're not going to get, you get nothing, right? So that's why I was hoping that that was the direction we could go. On the time and materials, then the needs assessment becomes that much more important. But on the percentage side, it wasn't as important for me because you're only going to go after what you know you can get me. And I understand the fact that, as you move forward, you might only go after selective ones, but in the first year or two, there's a certain level of low-hanging fruit in that other than what the staff's been able to try to write themselves, we haven't been going after some of these others, right? So I knew that there was a great opportunity here at the beginning. I was fine with moving time and materials in the future, but you came back with what you had, and we're being given the information we are right now that we should focus on time and materials. So I've got my motion there on the table. I hope that I can garner my colleagues' support.
What do you say?
I already seconded.
You second? Okay. I'm going to make a substitute motion that we go with time and material into the RFPs that are already proposed and give the grant writing services to California Consulting. I think that the $1.6 billion speaks for itself for their ability to get grants. Their 32 employees in the firm actually allows them to actually do more grant writing services, and I think the fact that they're very familiar with Orange County because they have quite a few Orange County cities, and so I think that the 834 grants they have written have brought in $1.6 billion, and so I think that speaks for the success of the company. So I think that I'd rather go forward now because we have parks coming up. We have 10 parks that we're renovating. I think that the fact that we have trails that I would like to see things get done sooner than later. We actually have the duck pond that's in process. And so I'll make a substitute motion.
That's not necessarily a substitute motion.
Yeah, we have two people that responded to the RFP this year. That both have come driven from L.A., I presume, to respond to our questions, and so to send it out again when they were responding.
No, what I mean is we could send it out again more broadly, but on an ad hoc basis, we could go ahead with this if you feel as if there's a deadline coming up.
I think it's just that they've come. Both of them deserve to be. They've been heard. They've been here. I think that both firms are quality firms. I think that we deserve to move forward. And the fact is, there's money out there on the table that we're missing. So
no, I'm just saying we could do both. We could go out to bid in general there, but in the meantime, if you think that parks thing is worth pursuing, although I agree with you, there's always something worth pursuing, we could go ahead on an ad hoc basis and go with them to get the parks thing off the ground before we do the other thing.
We could do a one-year contract, but I think it's worthy of us to give a contract out. I think it's the money that's on the table for the city is available. So my motion's on. Is there a second?
Okay. I agree with Councilman Gardner. I don't think that they're necessarily mutually exclusive motions here. So, I think that we can vote on both. I'm not going to second it. I would rather that we vote on the first part and then talk about the second afterward. So, right now you're looking for a second.
So I'm going to make a second substitute motion. I think I hear what you're saying, but I wanted to defer to Councilman Gardner. I had the same thought. So my substitute motion will be that we go out to bid in, how long is that going to take? Probably another 6 months, 9 months? No, I'm not trying to, I'm really, I was not trying to I was just, there was a chuckle from my colleague, and I was trying to be realistic.
No more than 60 days.
60 days. But and it'll come back to the council?
Yes.
What's your substitute motion?
So my substitute motion is to go award to both. Allow staff to, I would like for you to use both. Give them a 6-month contract, and we'll go out to bid, and whoever wins the next one, so we get started right away. Their pricing was like almost identical, $95, $97 an hour. We'll go out to bid again. That accomplishes, getting a more thorough, and we can go and start right now.
Second.
So it's been seconded? Okay. Yeah, call the vote. It's been first and seconded.
That motion carries with Mayor Voice abstained.
Congratulations? That's a question.
Agenda item 14, discussion of additional freeway access to Alton Parkway, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. I'd like to introduce Dave Rogers, our traffic engineering manager. He's going to provide a background and some context behind this conversation, and then we will, as council just asked for it for discussion purposes, we can move on from there. Mr. Rogers?
Mayor, council members, just a brief summary of the report. I know you've had a chance to read it. It's more for the audience than anyone else here. In 2012, the city completed the construction of Alton Parkway from Commerce Center to Town Center South, creating a new continuous route from the freeway to Lake Forest. Since Alton Parkway parallels Bake Parkway, the council has occasionally discussed possible ways to try and divert traffic to Alton to alleviate traffic along Bake. At the November 17th City Council meeting, Councilmember Hamilton suggested that the city explore the possible use of Lake Forest Traffic Mitigation Program funds, or LIFTM funds, in cooperation with the City of Irvine to accomplish this goal. Councilmember Hamilton provided a conceptual plan, if I can get this to work right, for discussion purposes that shows new ramps or limited access roads on the Veterans Cemetery site that would connect Alton to Bake, allowing access to and from both the 5 and 405 freeways. The concept proposed for discussion does present opportunities to potentially improve traffic conditions along Bake. Ramps or limited access roads through or adjacent to the property would likely reduce travel time between Alton and Bake to get to and from the freeways compared to our existing roadway connections of we have here Muralins slightly to the, what we like here in Public Works like to call to the east, and of course there's other connections further to the east. Ramps, constructing some type of additional ramps across the cemetery also appears to be feasible. From an engineering standpoint, the land is pretty flat. Topography is not really an issue. We don't see other issues or constraints that would make it a difficult engineering project. In addition, the development of the Veterans Cemetery would likely take advantage of the existing roadway connection opportunities, including Rockfield, which currently dead ends into the property, and it would help create another connection between Alton and Bay. However, there are constraints for to capitalizing on these opportunities. The first is based on some rough estimate work that staff did. We estimate the construction costs would likely be in the tens of millions of dollars. Construction of the ramps across the cemetery will also require the approval of Irvine, the Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, Federal Highway Administration, and the California Department of Veterans Affairs. The design type suggestions for this new access include elevated bridge structures and or at-grade limited access roads. Again, our estimate is a range, because it kind of depends on the length and width of potential bridges, but anywhere from $30 to $95 million. The initial council direction for the discussion requests information on the possible use of our LIFTM funds for the subject ramps and roadways. About $3 million of that $10 million has currently been allocated or spent. Although there's some opportunity to substitute projects such as this, there would still need to be the same or better level of improvement at the originally identified locations, and the cost would have to be equal to or less than the original project cost. Additional analysis would be necessary to determine the ultimate LIFTM applicability to the proposed concept, and the City Attorney's Office could provide more detailed information on the program constraints, if so directed by the Council. Should the Council wish to advance discussion of the proposed concept, staff requests direction as to the complexity and nature of future analysis as well as desired timelines for completion. If the council directs staff to continue the review, staff would suggest discussing the concept of OCTA, Caltrans, and Irvine, and CalVet as the first step. And with that, the staff is available for any questions.
A quick question. As far as grant writing goes, we just hired a grant writing company. Do you think that there might be any grants we could procure to help with this type of a project?
I think there's certainly, state and even OCTA in theory has grant programs that this may fit. How competitive it would be based on the grant writing or the grant criteria. But certainly it would be a transportation improvement. And as we know, we as Californians have voted for billions of dollars in bonds for transportation improvements and grants, and of course OCTA with our half-cent sales tax has various programs. But staff hasn't looked at that specifically and to see whether or not we think it would fit into one or more programs or how competitive it might be based on historical grants.
Based upon the cost, it seems rather prohibitive for us to consider doing something like this with our own dollars. But I'm up for city staff and maybe our new grant writing company to explore some options to see if we can procure some additional funds, maybe make it more affordable. I don't know what kind of investment Irvine would be willing to make on this. I don't know, but it would be interesting to see if we can pull some grants out before we consider going forward with the project. Just thought.
Yeah, and I think the comment that you made is where I'm at right now, which is to try to reach out to all those entities, CalVet, OCTA, the City of Irvine. This is property in the City of Irvine, not the City of Lake Forest, so obviously it's going to need that. There's going to have to be a variety of funding sources. But, when I look at two significant road projects that have been discussed, this one's a more recent one that's been brought up, and I think it's an excellent idea of Councilman Hamilton's, but the one that's been sitting out there since before I moved into town. So 18 years ago, I remember council members, campaigning on the Portola Road, right? And that one has a ton of constraints and a significant dollar amount associated with it. It's at least in excess of $50 million. So it's not the dollar amount that bothers me. It's the complexity of the issue. This one has a lot of complexities to it. There's no question about it. I mean, that particular piece of property is in the midst of a referendum in Irvine right now. But, I think that some discussion is good. When we're talking about, it's probably a little too early. I think it's a great idea to talk about grants with respect to this. Probably a little too early to engage any of these companies because we could potentially move up a list if this project was something that Irvine, OCTA wanted to move forward with along with us. But I mean, frankly, the widening of the 5 freeway and the El Toro interchange, which is still quite a few years away, is going to be much higher up the list. So this is probably, just to put it in perspective for all of us, somewhere in a 15 to 50 year just time frame, right? But you have to get the ball started at some point. You have to get it start to roll at some point. And I think again that the introduction that Councilmember Hamilton has provided with respect to this, it makes it interesting to begin those discussions. And so I'll make that a motion that we direct our staff to try to reach out to those agencies just to begin the discussion.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second, please.
Yeah, I have a general comment to all the staff, not just to the Public Works people. And don't take this the wrong way, and maybe it's my cold medications. But
Is that the same reason as before?
yeah, the restroom. But I was right.
You've been the last 3 years?
As much as I can. No, this is only the last 3 weeks. We've been elected by the people, and many of us are in touch with the people, and so a lot of what we're asking for, it's what the people are asking for. It's not that we necessarily care about it, or he's going to use that road particularly. It's that we sense somewhere in the community that people wanted something.
Are you saying that I'm in touch with the people? I think you're backhanded compliment here.
It's the cold medication. You see, I'm going in both directions. But we don't want to hear back, honestly, how difficult something is. We don't want to hear the problem. That's what I used to complain about the former city manager. Well, we've never done that before, and here are the problems. We would like you to say, that's tough, and it's going to take some real creative thinking, but could we do this and could we do that? That's what I'm looking for in everything. Not just, if it were easy, it would have already been done. We're only coming back to you with things that are tough. So don't tell us they're tough already, and because we know that. But what we'd like is, and oftentimes we get it, and I'm not picking on anybody or anything, but I would appreciate if when people go back to this, say, yeah, that's a bitch, but I think if we, talk to Irvine, and if we did this and we did the great things, we could get there. That's what I'm looking for. And I think everybody, we're looking for you to join us on the venture of solving problems that are not easy because the easy ones are already solved. So we're only, and the people are coming to us with tough stuff. So just a parenthetical comment on this issue.
Well, I again want to thank you for the compliment. And I feel the same way. I don't have the cold medicine as an excuse, so I'm just going to go for it here, okay? I have honestly been, frankly been a little stymied, maybe. This LIFTM money, it's just sitting out there. How much we've gotten, we've received, we've spent $3 million, we have $10 million left, about? Plus or minus?
The whole program's about 10.5. We have 3 either spent or allocated, so approximately 7 million left, which are all currently allocated to specific projects.
Okay. And how long has those LIFTM funds been around?
We just started collecting them as we started the OSA process and the development of the homes. So Shea Baker, Toll Brothers.
2010.
Yeah, 2010. 2011 is when we first started pulling permits. And started getting the first payments on LIFTM. Probably 11, 12.
And if you recall, just a little tiny stroll down memory lane, we had a project come before us, the right turn lane down El Toro, a right on Portola, making it a double right. I mean, that just wasn't, and I know that was a LIFTM. I know that was a LIFTM, and I think you were doing what the LIFTM ordinance said. So I'm going to support this motion, but let me just make the second motion after we vote on this one.
Motion made, and please cast your votes. Seconded. Well, let's count.
Isn't it 10?
I better count the votes. Is everybody's count?
I'm sorry. That motion carries unanimously.
Mayor and Council, can you remind us who gave the second on that?
First.
Dwight and Leah, thank you.
Sorry.
So I guess my second motion is that I want to hit the gas on relieving traffic in Lake Forest. And to echo Dr. Gardner's comments, we're waiting for LIFTM studies. We're waiting for, I feel like the pulse of the people is, and believe me, I was recently on Irvine Boulevard at 8 o'clock in the morning. It backs up like a mile, okay? I kid you not. Go from Irvine to Lake Forest, stop at Majeska or whatever the stop at Majeska was about a mile back. It's horrible. The Irvine tsunami of traffic, I sure hope it doesn't come to Lake Forest. Actually, it all went to that new Portola High School. Is mostly, fortunately, but anyway. So I would like to make a motion I've talked to Mal about this. I think we need to loosen the restrictions on Lifton. And again, it's going to be hard. It's not easy. Talking to Mal, we might have outreach to our developers, but they gave us money to relieve traffic in town, and it's just all restricted, tied up. It's tough. We're making double right lanes, turn lanes when there's no traffic there. I mean, how many cars were we going to use that lane? Maybe 2 a day? You don't have to answer. So I think we need to do a potential, help me out, Mal. We want to change the ordinance for Lifton to loosen the restrictions, outreach to the developers, not to retask the money. We've got to spend this money. It's just sitting there. We've only spent 30% in 7 years. So that means, the extra 70, it's going to be 20 years down the road. And I'm open to other ideas. This is just one idea. It might not even be feasible.
Mayor and members of the council, what I'd like to suggest is that if you'd like to do something with Lifton, give us direction and come back with a comprehensive report on the program. We have not collected all of the funds. That's still incoming. You've also already allocated some funds. And just to give the council a sense of what that would take to change some of the restrictions related to, or the parameters of Lifton.
And yes, this is just an idea. This is not like a direction that we have to do this. This is it might be impossible at that point.
Well, and I'd like to note, I would count that as number 2 of your 4 initiatives.
That's fine. You can count them all 4.
Closing of the year, he's got that to use.
I'll agree with that.
Okay, there's a second?
Yeah.
Okay, motion made and seconded.
Okay, just real quick.
Call the vote.
Real quick, I think the part that we have to keep in mind with respect to that money is that every single time a permit gets pulled, more dollars go in. So it's not that all of that money's been sitting there since day one. It's been accumulating since day one. So on day one, there was just a little bit, and then a little bit more and more and more and more. So, we have been spending it. I agree with you that this is something that we may want to explore, so I think it's great that we get, a report back. Traffic is something that, is when we do our community satisfaction survey, it's the number one issue, even though it's not, 50% of the respondents saying that it's important to them. It's more closer to 15. It's 15, 20, somewhere in that range, but it's the number one, right? So it's an important topic to have, but I just want to make sure that I clarified how those dollars come in. It's not that we've been sitting on them the whole time, but should we loosen it up? I think it's an interesting discussion to have, so I'm supportive of the motion.
Okay. Yeah. Motion made and seconded.
Well, if it's a vote, then that shouldn't count as one of my...
Then we're not voting. It's one of your... So it's a consensus.
Well, I think there was a motion, and don't we need to say we need to vote?
I was the one that made the motion. So it's a consensus. Thank you.
And on a serious note, I am open to, we need to think about ideas out of the box thinking, whether it's the traffic, I've said this during the budget when we did this second right lane to nowhere. That's what I like calling it, not the bridge to nowhere, but the second right lane to nowhere. We've got to be more creative in this stuff.
Okay. No vote needed. Let's. Okay.
Gladly.
Mr. Mayor, we have passed the 9:30 mark.
Okay. I'm making a motion. We move forward.
Second.
Cast your votes, please.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 15, request for appointment, Saddleback Valley Unified School District Facilities Master Plan Committee, submitted by Assistant to the City Manager.
Mayor and members of the council, Assistant to the City Manager Tomaino will provide a brief report.
All right. Thank you again, Ms. Rose. So the Saddleback Valley Unified School District has a facilities master plan that they're going to update. And to do that, they're forming a community committee that is comprised of staff and elected officials to give feedback on their current facilities and potential future facilities for the entire school district. They've asked us for 2 representatives, a staff representative. We humbly have submitted Mr. Scott Wasserman as a candidate to represent the city. In addition, we need a city council representative and potentially an alternate to serve in these meetings. There are 2 that have already been scheduled. The first is next week. It's December 13th. There's a second meeting scheduled for January 24th with potentially at least 2 more meetings. That's what the school district anticipates. So this evening we're asking for you to nominate somebody for this committee with an alternate if desired. Thank you.
Scott and I have been on this little subcommittee, and we're looking forward to a report before the end of the year to the rest of the council on what we found out and what we recommend going. So I would think, Scott, if you wanted to do it, then you should do it. If you don't want to do it,
No, I think that me and Councilman Gardner, we both have come, our eyes have been open to the lack of involvement into our own city, even though we're the most progressive on contribute to the growth of their school. And they consider children their live stream, and because of the new housing in Lake Forest, they've got a lot of new children into the community, the Saddleback Unified School District. And so I'm looking forward to this, and I think that with the knowledge that we've had working as a subcommittee, looking into what's going on with Saddleback Unified School District here in Lake Forest, I think that I'd be glad to, but I would like to nominate Councilman Gardner as alternate, because if it conflicts with TCA or if we both want to go, I'll go by and pick them up. All right.
I'll second that.
Okay. So do we need to vote on that? Please, cast your vote on.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Agenda item 16, selection of mayor and mayor pro tem for the ensuing year, submitted by city clerk.
So, as a matter of principle, every council member that has been on city council has had an opportunity to serve as mayor, with, of course, one exception, which was Adam Nick. I don't want to see that be repeated. This is Jim's final year on the council. We don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know if he's going to run, and if he runs, we don't know if he'll be reelected. So, in my opinion, this is Jim's one opportunity to serve the city as mayor, and so I would like to make a motion that Jim Gardner be mayor for 2018.
Second from the audience.
I think for, there's...
Was that public comment, please?
Stan Yambo?
I'm the only one, right? Yes, I don't need a microphone.
Oh, turn it
down. Yambo. Resident of Lake Forest, Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you. Stephanie Smith, thank you very much for your service. I'm going to miss you. That's for sure. Yes, give a round of applause. Of course, I would like to see, of course, Dr. Garner to be the mayor, of course. But the thing is that you're going to decide for something for 2018, and there is a recall that will affect 2018.
That's right.
So that's where my problem comes from. So I'm going to look in at the city manager and the city attorney to recommend or to put a motion out there if we can postpone the selection until after the recall election. So that's basically what I'm here for.
Thank you. Mr. Yambo.
Thank you.
Keep covering my 6.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually going to make that motion that we actually delay the vote until the first meeting in January. I don't have an opinion one way or another right now about who's mayor as long as it is not me. Okay, so I'm making that unequivocally clear at this point that anyone else other than me, I'm okay with.
So we can't make a substitute motion?
Well, you won't get my vote.
Okay, go ahead.
And, I might decide to sit over here and, who knows. So, but, we've had, I don't know the history as well as some might. Gail's probably been here the longest, Ms. Ackerman, but my recollection would be probably that Councilman Link also wasn't mayor. He served for one term. That would be my best guess. I'm pretty sure that he wasn't. So, and it's really interesting how this is handled countywide. And I think that if we weren't about to go to the ballot, most likely next year, and let the residents decide, that I would like to see a very pure rotation. But at this point, I think that that would be moot, because I think that if it goes to the ballot, there's a high likelihood that it's going to pass, and then the residents will have that opportunity to decide. And I've always kind of gone back and forth with this, because I think that there's some...
Just so I understand, when you're saying ballot, you mean the citywide election of a mayor ballot?
Election of a mayor ballot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And, I've kind of gone back and forth with this because I think there's some value in the community for having a certain level of consistency in the mayor role. It gets really confusing for people. There's a mayor for a year, and then there's another mayor, and then there's another mayor, and I think there's some value in having a mayor that's at least there for a couple of years, maybe even 4. But at the same time, I like the rotation. I understand what you're talking about, the elected mayor part, and I totally get that. What I was talking about was as we were rotating it. And when you rotate it, you want it to be basically a year, because then, it really gives everyone a chance, for the most part, to be able to do that. And I've come to that conclusion at this point. But I think that there's some benefit to the consistency of it and having someone there for a brief period of time. And I can tell you, even though I never want to do it again, that by the end of your term, you have a better understanding of how to operate in the role than you did on month 1. And so, I think there is some benefit to that. But all that said, my preference is that we push this to the first meeting in January, be that either the 9th, which would be if the city manager deems necessary, or the 16th, which is our regularly scheduled one. And
well,
by the way, you got the red light, buddy.
I just, Mr. Yamo, thank you for your comments there, but there is an election coming, and we're going to have possibly a different council after, and what would the time frame be for the ballots to be counted, being by the second meeting of January or the 1st of February?
We anticipate having the certified election results on the council agenda the first meeting in February.
So would that be there when the new council member, or
now, if there is going to be a new council member, that's when they would be seated. Would
you be amended to just moving it, allowing it to be till the vote that it got certified?
Pleasure of the council. I mean, I can do that too.
Probably the cold medicine speaking again, but it seems to me that Andrew has more right to participate in the selection of the mayor than does somebody who starts on February 1st. So, he hasn't been denied his opportunity to be involved in the decisions and anything else. Why would we deny him the opportunity going forward? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I'll second the substitute motion. I just think that there's an election.
Only one motion, right?
What? No, there was a motion made by.
Oh, sorry. No.
His
substitute motion. Okay.
What was your substitute?
My substitute motion is just to wait until after the, well, mine was till January 9th, 16th. You know, so, and
It could be then.
yeah, well, I don't know how long it's going to take them to count. I mean, I understand that they're literally going to be here, so we could put it on the agenda, and then if the new person, if there is one, or if there isn't, but if there was, the new person could potentially be seated, because they have no other races going on in the county, it's my understanding. Is that right, on that particular day? And
Yes, we are the only race going on in the county, but unfortunately, the Elections Code requires a 20-day canvass period, and that's to accommodate all of the overseas ballots for deployed military. The Election Code was changed to allow them to be actually postmarked on Election Day, and we have to allow for them to arrive from overseas. So the earliest date that it could come to council for certification is February 6th, unfortunately.
fair enough. And you know, part of what I'm trying to accomplish here is, again, I'm good with any of the four of you. I really am. Okay. So, but what I'm trying to accomplish here is that if for any reason we ended up having a split vote, that we wouldn't have some of the turmoil that has occurred in Laguna Niguel this year, and then just a few weeks ago occurred in Costa Mesa, which was interesting. Almost the end of a term, only 3 more council meetings, and they removed the mayor. Why couldn't they wait till the end of the year? I'm not really sure. But, and I think that kind of leaves a black spot. We have no idea. I mean, if Councilman Hamilton remains, we've got what we have here. If he doesn't, there's 1 out of 6. Right? Could be any of those 6, and we have no idea what they might want to do, and maybe they would want to try to build an alliance and change it around. And so I just think that there's you know, some value in just waiting till we know what the result is there, just so that we don't end up having that turmoil. So, but so that's where I'm at tonight. So that's my
So
substitute.
again, it's probably the cold medicine, but I think it's disrespectful to Councilman Hamilton not to give him the opportunity. He's already served 3 years. Whoever comes in will have served not 1 day. And it seems to me between the person 1 day and 3 years, he has the right.
I can appreciate that, but on day 1, if there was a new person, on day 1, they have the opportunity to change it on day 1.
That's true.
Okay. You can do that at any point. Well, I'm just saying that I think that kind of creates turmoil in the community if there is a change. So I'd rather kind of wait. I think erring on the safe side is kind of where I'm at. So
I'm going to agree with Councilman Gardner yet again tonight. It definitely is the cold medicine. We're,
No, there's a.
are you said you seconded it.
I seconded Andrew Dwight Robinson. Okay, so it's okay. To postpone it till.
That motion carries with Council Members Gardner and Basil opposed.
So that brings us to manager's report.
On a lighter note, I'd like to thank the council for giving Stephanie a memorable final meeting. I think we went through the gamut, so I know she's going to miss us. And so I'm glad we got to spend extra time with her tonight, and we are going to miss her. That's all.
Okay, Councilman Gardner.
Sometimes they say that government is like watching sausage be made. And I think sometime I'm the owner of a butcher store. And there's 2 sections in my store. Over here is the cold food, and over here is the fresh meat. and I'm having problems with my fresh meat section, because all the fresh meat that's coming out is all rotten. I got a strategic planning workshop that was an enormous waste of time and money and energy, and not only that, but it prevented us from doing things that we had postponed to do, and that was rotten coming out of the sausage machine. I got the districting. Come on now. And those guys were actually paid. They used out-of-date software. They didn't show up. When they showed up, they didn't have answers. They didn't post things on time. They didn't even show up for the last meeting. I got rotten sausage coming out of my machine over there. I got the RFP process that we've talked about many times. I got rotten sausage coming out of my machine over there. I don't know if any of you have read the animal care report. Now, what a joke that is. Do you know we asked the animal care people, we asked the staff to give us criteria on which we would judge the animal care program so they knew what they were doing. Staff didn't do that. They hired the animal care person. They put him out there. We spent $18,000 on an animal care person going out educating the people. Do you know how many dog licenses they got? 50, 100? They got one. $18,000, 3 months. You know how many citations they gave out? 10. 3 months. But they had a lovely time visiting the parks. $18,000. I got rotten sausage coming out of the machine. It seems, I could go on, I could spend the whole hour talking about all the issues that we're dealing with extremely poorly. And it concerns me, it disappoints me. And we have a lot more on our table: Village Pond Park, Senior Center.
Civic Center.
Civic Center, yeah, I kind of do them together. The police parking thing, police were supposed to give us criteria. They still haven't done that. I'm not sure if that isn't going to be another complete waste of time. So I believe at our next meeting during the closed session, we need to address the rotten meat. We need to address what's going on that we can't seem to do a new project without it ending up as a disaster or a complete disaster. So as a consensus item, I'm going to ask that we put that into the next closed session for our final session of the year.
Mr. Mayor, Council, that agenda item, unless there's litigation that's threatened, would have to be an open session agenda item. If there's litigation that's been threatened or if there's real property negotiations, then we can discuss that in closed session. Otherwise, it's difficult to get into closed session.
Can we do it to personnel?
Yes, we can.
Let's do it under personnel.
Thank you.
You need a second.
I need some.
It's your consensus item, so I'll honor that and give you a second.
No, I think he says consensus. Councilman Hamilton.
I'm just asking the question, did you just give consensus?
Yeah, well, yeah, we got consensus that we're going to go, with staff, yeah.
But was that a 2 or a 3 consensus?
3.
It didn't matter, it was 3.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was,
There's no report.
yeah,
Can we do that?
yeah. All
You get 4 now.
Okay. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for their hard work. I really appreciate, I don't think he's still here, our civil engineer. He left, Tom Rogers? Dave Rogers. I think he left. Everyone who was involved in tonight's meeting, thank you. I think this RFP discussion, I've been thinking about it, and I'm going to have to admit I would not have caught this RFP thing related to the quality, the additional technical, when issuing the RFP, I wouldn't have caught that. Just like I'm not an expert in, there's just a lot of things that I'm not going to have much say on the scope of work for Public Works. So I guess my comment is that I would like to see a more thorough review of the scope of work by outside consultants. Those that maybe even might be bidders. I don't think there's any problem with me, having one of the bidders help develop the scope. I mean, everyone's going to have the ability to comment on it. Hopefully that's part of the process, is that when you see a draft scope of work and you float it out to all the potential bidders, if it's written in a way that, oh, hey, this guy helped write the scope of work, and you have enough, 2 or 3 come back and say, oh, well, they wrote it because, they own this proprietary software. That's something we've heard in the past. This tree's proprietary software, and they're the only ones that use it. Okay, we'll flush that out when, the scope of work is done. But I guess my initial flush, or my initial stab at this scope of work going back on the agenda is that I'll read them, but I'm just not going to be an expert in all the different areas that the city does. And so my humble opinion is getting experts who know where the issues are, and then having their other vendors review, applicable folks who, it's a draft scope of work. It's not going to be final, so that the other vendors can have a say. And if there's something, kind of fishy, that they pull the wool over a staff size, that, we'll get someone else looking at it. That's my humble opinion, but I'm just open to other folks. I think I went to some city event recently, but it was a lot of fun no matter what it was, so thanks for putting it on. And I'm looking forward to the next city event upcoming.
Councilman Robinson.
Okay, I want to start off with something positive. So, the last night I was taking my son up to Saddleback Church for Boy Scout, for his Boy Scout troop. It was probably roughly about 6:45, and I'm driving up Lake Forest Drive, and the wind is howling. And I didn't notice a utility truck out there in any way. And no lights or anything like that, so I'm guessing that it wasn't there, but it may have been. I'm coming back down, maybe about 15 minutes later, coming back down Lake Forest Drive, roughly around Fernleaf on the other side of the street, right? And there's a downed tree, and I was kind of paying attention because I thought the wind is howling. I'm wondering what's happening here. And in that brief period of time, however short it was, there was a utility truck out there, for one of our contractors. They had cones up, and I could hear a chainsaw, and they're cutting a tree that had fallen in the road. Probably somewhere in that 10-minute period of time, we responded that quickly. So I just want to let you know how impressed I am with the contractor, how impressed I am with the response time. They treated it like it was, a robbery in progress, right? From a public works perspective, and that's incredibly impressive, because that's a public safety issue. Literally, it was a big tree that had taken out the far right lane coming down the hill. We all know that traffic really can pick up speed, especially when there is no traffic. That time of night, it was dark, and so I just want to let you know how much I appreciate that, and I hope that you pass that along to the contractor that was involved. We signed a number of tree certificates, the in memory of, or things like that today. And I was mentioning to, I think it was Jennifer, that hopefully we got as many tree donations as we lost today. So, because it was quite an unsafe one. But I also want to commend all of the OCFA firefighters that are probably out on the lines fighting fires, not necessarily in Orange County today, but all throughout the region. Hope that we all pray for their safety while they're out there fighting these what are just crazy, rapidly developing fires. And so they're definitely in my prayers. Just a couple of items, and I don't need consensus. I don't want consensus. I really want to just share this thought with the staff, and I hope that it's something that we take a look at. You determine how much you think is necessary and what's not. We've had a few residents that have come and talked to us about the number of trash receptacles in particular areas, and I know that we added some in I think along Cherry when we had some issues that popped up there. There are a few problem areas that we're constantly hearing about through social media. Some of the council members are being contacted about that, and I'm guessing they're coming through the ALF system. I'd like you all to just try to take a look at that. I'm not suggesting the Walt Disney model of like a trash can every 15 feet or anything like that, but I think that if we added a few here and there, it could probably improve some of the litter situation that we're seeing, especially where there's some heavy on-street parking. So that's one thing. Secondly, and then I'll be done here, from a public safety perspective, we look at Prop 47, Prop 57, some of the early release, some of the of inmates, some of the fact that it's so much more difficult for you to do your job today. People that you used to handcuff, throw in the back of the car, and take in, and maybe they were in for a few days, now they're getting a citation. And I know that that's frustrating for the officers out there. I know that it's frustrating for residents that are seeing some petty theft crimes that are increasing. I mean, sometimes they're decreasing, but just the perception out there is that they're increasing. And at the same time, I think some residents are hesitant at times when they see something that they don't find to be significantly criminally egregious to dial 911, because they view that as being something very significant and eminent. But I think that a lot of residents don't know the non-emergency line. And just like last year we had now I can't remember it, the Don't Make It Easy campaign, right? If we had a campaign out there to try to advertise that non-emergency line in some way, and maybe you all are already working on this, but I just wanted to throw that out there that, if we could make that more prevalent, of course that means there's going to be more people calling it, but that I view that as being a good thing, and I hope that we can make that just as prevalent in people's minds as 911 in this community, so that when they see an issue that needs to be addressed, there's only so many officers out there. We can't ask you all to be omnipresent. We don't have the funding for it, and frankly, it would be nearly impossible to staff something to the level of expectation that people have. But we all want to make sure that you all can respond to things quickly, and so as they can make those phone calls and you can be on scene responding to something, in a short period of time, I think that there's a lot of value in that. So I'd ask that the staff just kind of take a look at that. Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience with us this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem Basil.
I have a lot to say. Just kidding. No comments tonight. Good night.
Wow. We're still gaining new businesses, and I'm pleased to announce that a Thursday morning grocery outlet on El Toro Road, which is the old Fresh and Easy, will be having their grand opening, and I'd like you all to show up because I'm excited about it. It's something that it's in a great location for a new grocery store there, so I'm excited about what they bring. Their lower priced foods supposedly, and so I'm really excited about that. I also have a comment and a compliment to be said. I was at the sports park the other day, and earlier this year we toured the sports park with the city manager and the assistant director of community services, and it was in a dilapidated state. And I'm pleased to announce that the planters have plants in it, and they have fences protecting the baby plants now. The grass is looking better, and so I'm really pleased that sports park, which I always have considered a gem for Lake Forest and even South Orange County because of the compliments that I get from people being there. But even with it in the dilapidated state that I saw it in, people were still complimenting it on what we have here in Lake Forest. And so, good job. I'm pleased to say that it really looks nice. Thank you. So, on another note, we've got a lot done this year, and so I'm happy with Leah Basil's done a wonderful job this year, and I think that our council is moving forward. And so I'm happy. I'm unhappy about the recall, obviously, but I'm happy that the council is working together better. And so I want to thank the council as we end this year that you guys have done a great job. And so we've got a lot done, and staff, Deborah. They give compliments to you. So see you guys at Grocery Outlet, and I have nothing else to say, but happy holidays to you all. Closed meeting.